Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about the astrology of May 2026. Hope that you're having a wonderful Wednesday afternoon out there. We're doing things a little bit differently here. We're going live on a Wednesday. Just trying to get back in the swing of things. Last week we had some severe weather that visited our area, and it kind of threw everybody off of their routines. And I had planned to do this last Friday, but here we are today on Earth Day. Happy Earth Day to everyone around the world. I hope that you're having a wonderful day, and we're going to just break down the astrology of May for you. We're going to go through lunations. We're going to go through ingresses of planets into new signs, solar phases, out-of-bounds planets, benefic and malefic enclosures. There's going to be all sorts of things that we're going to go on a journey with. We're going to be here a couple hours just breaking it down, big picture thoughts, and in great detail. So if you are joining me, please let me know in the chat that you're here. Let me know where you're stopping in from. It's always lovely to hear from you, friends. Okay, so we're talking astrology of May 2026 today. We got a couple announcements before we dive into it. You can find me over at spencermichaud.com. And right now I'm having a spring sale. So there is a spring sale that goes from now until the first day of May, May Day, Beltane, if you celebrate. And it's 20% off all of my readings, all of my recordings, everything that's in the store, everything that's in the Book Now button, tutoring sessions, natal chart readings, transit readings, oracle, horary type questions. All of it's 20% off for the next few weeks. So take advantage of that. And I hope to work with you moving forward. You can see that there's all these 26 offerings, all of these beautiful webinar recordings in the store, the Decans webinars, the Dignity and Devotion Planetary Magic webinars, the Stars and Card Tarot webinars, all of it 20% off. Hope that it will bring you some joy and help you on your journey. Also have a beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews of Third Coast Mojo, and she has some awesome stuff too. She has an Etsy shop where she takes the elections of the planets and says, hey, the planets are in a really good position. I want to capture that energy and that essence into something material, into material form. And she's done this with all sorts of different planetary elections. One of the ones that's being featured this month is Venus in Pisces, which is the exaltation of Venus in a come to me oil. If you're trying to attract love into your life, excellent for Taurus season, excellent to the Venus ruled sign of Taurus, but we have the exaltation of Venus in Pisces. There's also the Sun in Leo crown of success oil that is great if you're trying to get attention or succeed in your chosen path. Mercury in Virgo Hermes harvest is great for concentration, for focus, for getting organized, for doing all of the little things in your life that require attention to detail. And then, of course, there's Mars in Capricorn, Iron Teeth. If you need some extra boost, some energy to sustain you, to get moving on things, that's a great way to apply martial energy at its best point, its exaltation as well. I also have a newsletter that you can subscribe to if you want to know when I'm going live, or if you want to know what products are being released at Third Coast Mojo on Etsy, or if I'm doing a sale. You can sign up with the description of this video or wherever you're consuming this podcast. You can also support the channel with a super chat while I'm live on YouTube today, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com and become a patron of the channel over there. You can sign up for a monthly membership if you want to be a long-term supporter of the channel, or you can just throw five bucks in there if you feel like you've got a few bucks to spare, I guess. Sorry, I'll spit it out. I'm not the greatest at the sales pitches, but anyway, thank you so much for those of you who have been able to support the channel. I appreciate all of you, and yeah, let's get to it. Okay, so we've got some friends stopping in here. Hype Max Pinka 593 is here. What's up? How you doing, friend? Says, which astrology is this, Vedic or sidereal? It's actually neither of those. So Vedic is a type of astrology used in the Eastern civilizations, and they use the sidereal zodiac to do their astrology. We're doing traditional Hellenistic type of astrology here, but I definitely appreciate all of the different forms of astrology and have kind of been curious about Vedic and sidereal astrology as well. So maybe there will be something for you here, friend. If you have something to contribute to the chat, as well as If you have some insights of your own, feel free to put it in there as well. All right. All right. Let's get rolling. What do we say? So we've got the Astrology of May 2026. We just have started coming off of some really challenging astrology in the early to mid part of April. We just are coming off of, as I'm recording this on April the 22nd, happy Earth Day, everyone. We're just coming off of this kind of big, huge Aries stellium, right? Where we had a number of planets. There was at least 6 planets and an asteroid in Aries over the past week or so. We've started to see the planets shift into Taurus. We had the big Mars-Saturn conjunction and a Mercury malefic enclosure. We're trying to kind of wrap our heads around what that all means. We are looking at this particular month coming up in May. We have a number of full moons. We have 2 full moons to be exact. We've got 1 new moon and 2 full moons. So I guess you could consider that a blue moon. So here's some of my big picture thoughts. We have 2 full moons. We have the full moon on the 1st of May, and we have the full moon on the 31st of May, 1 in Scorpio, 1 in Sagittarius. We also have a new moon in Taurus conjoining the fixed star Algol, which is a challenging fixed star in the later degrees of Taurus. So that's something to keep your eye on as well. I'm going to break all of these things down in greater detail. We're just giving you kind of the overview right now for the first 10, 15 minutes or so, and then we're going to go through each week by week to see what these might mean in greater depth. We also have Mars in a benefic enclosure at the beginning of the month and Venus in a malefic enclosure for most of the month. So the Mars one is only a few days. The Venus one lasts for most of the month of May. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with that technique, basically there's a technique in traditional astrology where the aspects of planets like Venus and Jupiter, when they are on either side of a planet, that can be like a protection kind of influence, a benefic enclosure, something that is helpful. A malefic enclosure involves Mars and Saturn making those same types of like backing a planet into a corner aspect that is really difficult, where it feels like some of the significations that the planet wants to make, that Venus in this case wants to make, are feeling kind of stuck, kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, you could say. So Venus issues might be a little bit challenging in May. So we'll break that down for you, and that's kind of frustrating because it's Taurus season, and that's one of Venus's seasons. That's the yin spring season of Venus, and having Venus in malefic enclosure around that period of time could be a little bit frustrating. So we'll try to give you some strategies to weather that and to try to move forward with some of the good energy of the other planets that we can lean into, even if Venus isn't supported as much as we might want. Stella Rendition is here. Says, hi, Spencer. Nice to see you, Stella. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Thank you for stopping in. I love all the colorful hearts here. Happy Earth Day, my friend. Okay, so we've got Mars in benefic and Venus in malefic enclosure. I'll give you more of the dates for that as we move forward, but Mars benefic enclosure, the 1st through the 4th. The malefic enclosure of Venus is the 1st through the 28th of May. We also have Mercury cazimi this month and Uranus cazimi, which is a little bit of a controversial use of a traditional technique, but I'll explain that in a second. But Mercury cazimi is when Mercury is renewed in the heart of the sun. We have a Mercury cazimi that's coming up in the middle of the month at 23 degrees Taurus, the 3rd decan of Taurus. So Mercury is going to be giving us a download of information on how to repair some things that may have fallen into disrepair or fallen into corruption, or maybe help us to go back and figure out some mistakes that we have made with some of the processes that we've been going through. So a really powerful new moon for fixing things. Actually, new moon is not the right term. A powerful Mercury cazimi, it's sort of like a new moon. It's sort of like the renewal of the moon in the heart of the sun, but in this case, it's Mercury. So a new phase for Mercury that is going to be helping us to understand how to repair something that maybe we did a little bit hastily. Maybe with all this Aries energy, we did something very quickly or rashly. And then at this Mercury Cazimi, we're going to have an opportunity to go back and evaluate what we did and maybe fix some things that may have gone wrong. The Uranus Cazimi is interesting because Uranus is a quote unquote modern planet. And the Cazimi is a traditional technique. So we're kind of mashing up techniques a little bit. The other interesting thing about the concept of Uranus Cazimi is that technically Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune are not quote unquote visible planets. It's hard to see them with the naked eye. So the visibility part of a connection with the sun is really important in traditional astrology. So we're kind of, going on a little bit of an experimental journey with calling a Uranus conjunction with the sun a Cazimi. But I thought that it was important enough to take a look at how the next Uranus cycle might be seeded with the energy of the sun at 1 degree of Gemini, because by the time we get into May, we aren't quite there yet as I'm recording this in late April, but in the next week or so, we're going to see Uranus moving into Gemini. And that's a pretty big deal for just sort of the collective zeitgeist and sort of the things that we may be trying to aspire to, the godlike qualities we might be trying to aspire to, but also could lead to some hubris and some challenges along the way. Let's see here. We've got a couple Pluto squares this month as well. We've got I believe we've got a Mercury-Pluto square, and then the big one at the end of the month is a Mars-Pluto square. Generally, squares with Pluto reveal corruption. Depending on the nature of the planet with Mercury, it could be revealing some thoughts that we have or some ideas that we have that might not be the most healthy, or that are revealing something that we missed or that was buried underground or was invisible. Mars-Pluto squares can often bring up, like a volcano, some violent things, or some accidents, or some things that are really not enjoyable, I guess you could say. So I'll try to prepare you for that and give you some of the themes that are coming with that. Some of the main themes with the Mars-Pluto square and the Mercury-Pluto squares. It's happening from Taurus to Aquarius. And a lot of the themes of the first 10-degree section of Taurus are worries related to resources and money. So we might be having some worries and needing to make some plans about our resources due to some of the things that are being revealed socially with Pluto and Aquarius. Okay, so those are kind of our big picture thoughts here. Let's kind of start giving our medium range viewpoint. Welcome another friend here. Ani is here. Says, hello, Spencer and friends. Even though I set up notifications on YouTube, the algorithm buried your channel. But luckily, I'm subscribed to the emails. Can't stay long, but just wanted to say hi. Oh, nice to see you, Ani. And I'm sorry that YouTube is burying our algorithm here. I don't know what to make of that. Maybe I've been too critical of AI and big tech recently, or capitalism. Maybe that's what it is. But we are on a different day. So we're not on the normal day that we would normally be on. So that might be part of it too. But yes, friends, if you want to be able to know when I'm going live, make sure the notification bell is on, and make sure that you are signed up for the email so that you know. I send out an email for 2 people when I'm going live as well. So that's another reason to sign up for those email lists. Okay, so let's talk about the medium range viewpoint. We've got lunations for the month of May. Lunations, fancy word for moon phases. So we have 2 full moons in May. The first full moon is at 11 degrees of Scorpio on the 1st of May. That is going to be the Scorpio moon opposing the Taurus sun. Some challenges really around pacing ourselves, and about maybe life versus death, like what we are trying to grow versus what we're trying to let go of. Those are the paradoxes we're trying to hold, and the oppositions we're trying to balance out around that period of time. That full moon is going to set off the benefic enclosure of Mars and the malefic enclosure of Venus. So we'll talk about that as we go further along in the broadcast again today too. But that's a pretty pivotal moment starting right in the beginning of the month. We have a last quarter moon at 19 degrees of Aquarius on the 9th of May. Okay, so we're going to be trying to let go of maybe some ideas, let go of some kind of transitions, right? We're going to need to reduce our ability to, I don't know, our desire to keep moving from one one shore to another, I guess you could say, so that we can plant some seeds and ground ourselves and kind of get a little bit rooted. I think those are important qualities at the last quarter moon in Aquarius, squaring the Taurus sun. We've got a new moon at 25 degrees of Taurus on the 16th of May, planting seeds for repair, right? There might be some things in our life that have gone wrong. There might be some things that we did that were rash. This is similar themes that we talked about with the Mercury cazimi with the sun. The cazimi of the sun and Mercury come right before this new moon. So we might get some information about what needs to be repaired. And then the new moon is going to help us to kind of go through and really take the steps necessary and maybe learn some of the patience necessary to create success moving forward. Having the new moon on Algol, we have to be really careful about managing our emotions. There's a really powerful protective feminine force around that fixed star of Algol at 25 degrees of Taurus. So we have themes associated with quote unquote losing our head with the story of Medusa and Perseus around that fixed star. But we also have strong protective influences. So this could be a new moon where we're initiating process, where we're protecting someone that we care about or protecting ourselves. We have a first quarter moon once the sun moves into Gemini on the 23rd of May at 2 degrees of Virgo. So at that point, we might be trying to, after we've planted the seeds for repair, we may be attempting to learn new skills and gather information. So this is a first quarter moon on the 23rd where we're kind of breathing in Gemini information, okay, visiting all of these different flowers, gathering all these different bits and pieces, and then we're trying to figure out how to process it and say which part of this is useful, which part do we need to discard, and that's going to help us with the lunar process. And then that culminates in the second full moon of the month on the 31st of May at 9 degrees of Sagittarius, potentially taking action on some of our ideas. After we've kind of weeded through all of the noise, then we might be able to put some of those ideas into action at the end of the month. All right. We've got Curtis. Curtis Knight is here. It says Galactic Yapathon. Nice. Well, that's what we do here. We talk about astrology. We go live. We talk about all of the different parts and pieces of it. Sometimes we can be a little long-winded. I like it, the description of that, a galactic yapathon. I love it. That's kind of actually, it's an accurate description. Okay, so those are our lunations. We've got ingresses of planets into new signs. On the 2nd of May, Mercury moves into Taurus. So Mercury is going to be moving out of Aries into Taurus, potentially slowing down our thinking a little bit, helping us with patience, helping us with communicating in ways that aren't necessarily inflammatory, but are maybe trying to draw people in and harmonize. Mercury is moving very quickly in the month of May, though. So it's not going to stay in Taurus very long. It's going to be in Taurus from May 2nd to May 17th, and then it's going to ingress into Gemini, its home sign. So that's when Mercury is very, very powerful. Great for communication, great for translating something complicated and maybe making it simple so multiple people can understand it and benefit from it. The day after Mercury ingresses into Gemini, Mars is going to move into its exile in Taurus. So we're going to move from Mars in its home sign of Aries into its exile in Taurus, a place where it's a little bit less comfortable. Mars in Aries has a lot of energy towards starting something, like the youthful enthusiasm of spring. Mars in Taurus has some tendencies potentially to get stuck in the mud a little bit. There's challenges of inertia. There's challenges of trying to stay consistent. We might be binging on something that we're really into, or we might have really difficulty getting started. So those are some of the challenges around Mars and Taurus. Also, Mars is a planet that can sever and separate us from the types of things that we desire. In Taurus, we can see some severance and separation from the material resources that we might need. So there might be some material challenges when Mars moves into Taurus. The same day, the 18th, is a big day in May. Venus is going to move from Gemini into Cancer. Okay, so this is a really big shift mid-month with Mars moving from Aries into Taurus and then Venus moving from Gemini into Cancer. Now, it's really fascinating to me, and I'll show you this on the chart when we get into the details. But even though both of those planets are shifting positions, normally that would end our malefic enclosure. But in this case, there's kind of a really just a weird quirk where because of the shifting of signs, it kind of extends the malefic enclosure into those new signs. And really the energy about that is going to be like we're dealing with one set of problems, and then it's going to almost like feel like mid-month it's going to shift to a completely different set of problems, right? So keep your eyes peeled for that. We'll try to break it down for you as we get into the details of it. But finally, the last ingress that we have is the sun moving from Taurus into Gemini on the 20th of May. So shifting out of the Venus-ruled sign of Taurus and into the Mercury-ruled sign of Gemini. Solar phases. So this is a fancy word for planets' relationship to the sun. We can also think about these solar phases as when a planet is either stationing retrograde, appearing to move backwards, or stationing direct, which in traditional Hellenistic astrology are generally pretty important moments. They're called moments of phasis, moments that speak much louder than other symbols and omens. So the first omen that we have on some level is Uranus is going to be going under the beams of the sun at 0 degrees of Gemini. When a planet goes under the beams of the sun, it's kind of taking to its sickbed. It's getting ready for renewal. Remember we talked earlier about a Uranus potential cazimi? Well, this is a similar type of concept that is a little bit controversial if you're just a purist with traditional astrology. But I do think that I have seen outer planets also kind of speaking when they go under the beams of the sun. All right, like so there might be some kind of disruption around this period of time, the 5th of May, that could give us some insight into what type of new Uranus cycle is going to be coming. Some kind of new technology, new communication with Gemini, our attention being split in a million different directions with Uranus and Gemini. And it might feel a little bit destabilizing at first, but then we'll hopefully be able to wrap our heads around it. On the 6th of May, Pluto is going to station retrograde at 5 degrees of Aquarius. So this is a review of some of the things that Pluto has been trying to unearth. All right. What Pluto likes to do, the action of Pluto, from my observations, is that it brings things to the surface that have been pushed underground or repressed or hidden. And it says, these might be some painful things that you didn't want to deal with, but here they are. They're coming up for you to deal with them. When Pluto's stationing retrograde, we might have to go back and review some things that have already been revealed, or we may have to go back and say, well, we didn't quite get it all. You know, there was still some monsters hiding out in the dungeon or underground that we got to slay or to deal with or to heal. So that's something to keep an eye on at the beginning of the month. Of course, on the 14th of May, we have the Mercury cazimi, Mercury conjoining the sun, being renewed in the furnace or the heart of the sun. That's what cazimi means, is in the heart. And that's at 23 degrees of Taurus. So that means that this is happening in a space where we need to slow down, or we need to take a look at how our actions, what they've produced over time. And Mercury helps us ask questions. So we may be asking a lot of questions on whether what we're doing is working, and do we need to make any shifts, or do we need to make any repairs in our life? Uranus is going to cazimi in the heart of the sun on the 22nd of May at 1 degree of Gemini. So that 22nd day of May, there's a lot going on that day. But I would really pay attention to the news that comes out, especially regarding technology and communication, because that could show us much of what the next Uranus cycle is going to be all about. I believe Uranus spends about 7 years in a sign. So there could be some really important information about the types of things that Uranus is trying to shock us out of, old patterns and old ruts, and maybe something that we might be trying to aspire to be godlike. The way that I like to describe Uranus is really piggybacking off of what Liz Green said in her really excellent book, The Art of Stealing Fire, the Prometheus impulse to take a little bit of divinity and give it to humanity, or aspire to be like the gods. Now, he was punished for that very severely. He was chained to a rock, and Zeus sent an eagle or a vulture to consume his liver each day, and then regenerated that liver each day, so the suffering would be endless. So I think that there's some warnings about trying to be godlike, and I really feel like we're seeing that with the advent of AI technology and things of that nature, and there are real consequences to that. A lot of the book that Liz Green has, The Art of Stealing Fire, talks a lot about the possibility or the tendency for Uranian impulses to become uncontrollable, to be sort of like Frankenstein's monster, where maybe the intention was noble at the beginning, but it sort of takes on a life of its own, and it can be very difficult to put that genie back in the bottle. All right, so the final solar phase that we have in May is on the 27th of May, where Mercury, after Cazimi, after it gets renewed in the heart of the sun at the 14th, it is going to emerge and become visible again as the evening star at 21 degrees of Gemini. So that's another moment of phasis where it's speaking. The things that we're working on behind the scenes are going to start to become visible. When it is emerging as an evening star at 21 Gemini, a lot of the energy that we have around that is feeling like we have to make an all or nothing choice. That decan, that 10-degree section of Gemini, is often associated with ultimatums. So we might see an ultimatum being made. We've seen plenty of those in the news recently with the United States and the conflict with Iran. One of the interesting parts of Gemini 3 and those types of ultimatums is the third 10-degree section of Gemini is actually the last decan before the change of direction, or the visible change of direction of the sun at the summer solstice. So the sun keeps rising in the sky. That's called declination. It rises higher each day at noon. And then when we get to the summer solstice, it's the longest day of the year. And then the moon, or the sun, starts to rise slightly lower in the sky. So that represents a change of mind, a change of direction. We can also see this with the Cancerian tendency, like a crab, to go sideways, to go backwards. So there is a lot of backtracking that often happens in the third decan of Gemini. We've seen this really with the President of the United States. He even has a nickname about it, Taco, right? Where he says something and makes an ultimatum and then has to backtrack. That's the Gemini 3 to a T, and that is where the president's natal sun is at. So he is playing out that archetype for us in real time. So there may be some sort of condition like that again, where it maybe even in our personal lives, where we've drawn a line in the sand, where we were seeing things as black and white, and then we have to actually change our minds about it at the revelation of Mercury as the evening star. All right, let's see. So out of bounds planets and enclosures. So this is our last mid-range set of thoughts for the month. Out of bounds planets are when a planet is moving outside the normal declination range, which we just described as how high the sun is rising at noon at different points of the year. When those planets go outside of that range in relationship to this imaginary band across the sky called the ecliptic, they're said to be out of bounds. And when we have an out of bounds planet, it basically is acting outside of the normal socially accepted way. In traditional societies, they said it was acting outside the realm of the king, the solar king, right? We can think of this as, in more modern terms, as these are sort of maverick planets that aren't really following the rules. And we're going to have the moon out of bounds from May the 2nd to May the 8th. Venus is going to go out of bounds, okay, from 12 degrees of Gemini to 22 degrees of Cancer from May 4th to June 7th. So Venus out of bounds is really interesting to me. So not only are we going to have Venus out of bounds, but Venus is going to be in malefic enclosure from the 1st to the 28th. So we've got an out of bounds Venus in malefic enclosure that is acting way outside of its normal socially acceptable way. This can take a number of different forms. One of the forms that Venus out of bounds often takes is relationships that aren't necessarily traditional, like May-December romances, cross-cultural romances where you're attracted to something or someone that's very different than you, where you are attracted to things in your life that you normally wouldn't be. Think of Venus out of bounds as like you normally, like for example, this is not really Venus out of bounds. Normally I wear a green hoodie on Fridays because I do my live streams on Fridays. Today I'm wearing blue. It's kind of out of bounds because it's a completely different day, right? So I kind of have a Taurus moon tendency to have a certain set of clothes I wear on different days, and it's pretty regular rotation. Um, but think about, like, you go to the thrift store or something like that, and you buy something with Venus out of bounds that you're like, let me take a risk with this, and it's like some, I don't know, weird like zigzag pattern that's neon yellow and pink, and it's very bright and loud, and you normally wear muted colors. And then when Venus goes back in bounds, you look at that thing in your closet, you're like, what the hell was I thinking? This is not what I would normally choose, and I'm never going to wear this again. So you have to be a little bit careful with Venus out of bounds, that you don't get yourself in a situation that you don't want to be in. Same is true for relationships. You might find yourself attracted to someone that you would normally be like, have the little voice in your head that would say, this person probably isn't good for me. This isn't going to make me happy. But you could also experiment with this too. There are artists in the world that have Venus out of bounds that are very experimental and have created some amazing things. Bjork is one that comes to mind with Venus out of bounds. She is extraordinarily creative and really does not follow the conventional rules. And that can lead to some really beautiful experiences and expressions as well. So Venus out of bounds, the 4th of May through the 7th of June. We have the moon out of bounds again from the 16th to the 20th. And then Mercury is going to go out of bounds from the 22nd to June the 14th, from 11 degrees of Gemini to 17 degrees of Cancer. Mercury out of bounds is a little bit different than Venus. It's communication. It's the way that we do commerce. We might be saying things or thinking thoughts that we wouldn't normally think. It's very much outside the box type of thinking. It also can get us into trouble if we're saying things that we would normally wouldn't be socially acceptable to say. So those are the kind of things that we have to watch out for. The last thing that we didn't mention at the beginning is, not only is Venus going to be in malefic enclosure, enclosed by Mars and Saturn, but at the beginning of the month, Mars is going to be enclosed by Venus and Jupiter, which is called a benefic enclosure, a good helping hand for Mars, right? There are two ways I've seen this play out with people in history and in our own personal lives. One is that we might be protected from things like accidents or violence, and we may have like a little guardian angel on our shoulder for that period of time. I would also say sometimes people can get away with doing martial or saturnine horrible things. Again, the president of the United States has a benefic enclosure of his Saturn. So there's been, Teflon Don, they call him, where he has claimed that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. And that's sort of the energy of a maleficent planet like Mars or Saturn being enclosed by the two benefic planets, Jupiter and Venus, like getting away with something horrific. So that's also a possibility at the beginning of the month as well. So it could go both ways: protection from the worst accidents potentially, or somebody getting away with something that they probably shouldn't. Okay, so those are our out of bounds planets and enclosures for the month. All right, we got some nice friends stopping in here. KP, Karen is here, says, hi, Spencer and all, listening at work. Glad to finally catch a live. Nice to see you, Karen. Hope everything's going well with you down in Cleveland. A fellow football fan, I think. We've got the draft coming up this week, which I affectionately call Football Christmas. It's one of my, I don't know, it's one of the compromises I make with late stage capitalism, or paradoxes that, I really love football, and I know that I probably shouldn't, but I'm excited about the end of this week. Hope good luck to the Browns, I will say. Stephen is here. Good afternoon. Happy Wednesday. Nice to see you, Stephen, the Jupiterian. Hope everything's going well your way over on the West Coast in San Francisco. Hope everything is going well. Hype Max is here and says, yo, I am back. I'm glad to see that you are hanging in there. Hope that you're getting some benefit from our analysis of the astrology of May this month, Hype Max. And I know you asked a question about personal astrology as well. On the monthly live streams, I try to stick to the kind of the big picture astrology. But if you want to know more about your natal chart, I do have readings that are available that are on sale right now for spring. If you go to spencermichaud.com and you click on the Book Now button, I'd be happy to work with you. Okay, so let's start zeroing in on kind of the daily, weekly unfolding. We did our big picture thoughts. We kind of looked at our medium range view of things that stuck out to me. We're going to start by looking at Taurus. Oh, you're from India. Well, thank you for joining us, friend. Love having our international friends come through here. So appreciate you stopping in, and thank you for contributing to the chat here. Appreciate you. Okay, so Sun in Taurus 2. So what I'd like to do on this particular broadcast is I break down the predictions of what I see the astrology that might come through for us in the collective into 10-degree sections of solar movement. Those are called decans. Deca means 10, right? So we've got the sun moving through the 10-degree section of Taurus, okay, that is associated with a particular tarot card. Each decan has sort of an image that can tell us part of the story of what we might all be collectively experiencing. The sun is like a big spotlight. It says here, this is what we should focus on as a group, as a collective. And with the sun in Taurus 2, this is a continuation of this Taurus narrative. Taurus 1, you could see the 5 of Pentacles, where people have fallen on hard times. It's important to review that because we're going to have the Mars and the Mercury squares to Pluto from this decan of Taurus, the first decan, to the first decan of Aquarius. So we should understand that this first decan of Taurus is often related to worry over finances or over material security. The first decan of a sign usually shows us the lack of something. In this case, the lack of material security. When we get to the second decan of a fixed sign, or really of any sign, we often see something in harmony, in balance. Okay, so here we have harmony between giving and receiving, harmony between work and play. Taurus 2 is called the Lord of Material Success in a Golden Dawn reference manual called the Book T. Aleister Crowley, in his book, The Book of Thoth, who is sort of a secondary analysis for the decans and the tarot, calls it the Lord of Success. Austin Coppock, the excellent Decanic astrologer who wrote the book 36 Faces, calls it a Linga Yoni, which is a fertility device. It's a fertility stone. So this decan really is about preparing and inseminating the fields, right? In the first decan, we were worried about money, so we started planning. We started removing obstacles. Think about removing giant boulders from the field in the first decan so that you can make that soil ready to plant. In this particular area of Taurus, between 10 degrees Taurus and 20 degrees Taurus, or 19 degrees and 59 minutes if we want to be super technical, we see the earth is fecund. That's fecundity is my favorite Austin Coppock word that I learned from him. Fecundity is really the ripening of the soil so it is ready to be planted. So this is the time of year where we're planting our seeds. We're planting our gardens. We've prepared the soil. We've removed all the old dead stuff from the last season. I have a number of trees that I'm ready to plant. We did a big fruit tree planting last year. And this year we have a couple extra ones that we want to put in. We've got some plum trees. We've got some American redbuds, which are beautiful in my area. What else did we get? We got a couple native black cherry trees. So a lot of our process in the weeks ahead are figuring out how do we dig the space for this, put them in the ground, make sure that we water and care for them. But part of the Taurus 2 story is knowing how to stop when you've done what you can do for the day and to let nature take over the final half of it, right? As gardeners, we learn that we have to work with the nature or the natural rhythms of this beautiful earth, like we are doing here on Earth Day today. And when we plant something, we don't want to micromanage it. We want to make sure the conditions are right, that it has enough light, enough water, enough soil, enough nutrients. But we don't want to just like stand over it and continually water it or continually feed it or continually like yell at it to grow faster, right? It's not the way it works. We have to be patient. We have to do what we can do, and then we have to rest and let the process play out. The same thing can be true in our personal lives. We can be gardeners of our lives. When we have projects that we're working on, we can create the right conditions for success. We can plant the seeds, like calling someone we want to start a business relationship with or something like that, and then facilitating the exchanges, making sure we have all the right conditions and resources to make the project successful. But then sometimes we have to let the process play out. So this is a good lesson from nature. This is what gardening is great for teaching us. It teaches us patience. It teaches us to work hard when we know what we've got to do and we have work to do, and then to rest. Taurus too can also be about desiring the good things in life, about eating good food, about taking time to play. When the work is done, we need to play, because if we're working too hard, we can burn ourselves out. We need to learn to rest. We need to learn to play. So the balance between work and play, the balance between giving and receiving in this decan is really highlighted. The spirit, the daimon in this decan that we see in the 36 heirs of the zodiac, which is a fragmentary piece of text. It's like 2 pages long that we got from the early Hellenistic period, like, I don't know, a couple hundred years ago at least now. It gives us a series of spirits. In this case, they're called daimons or guides. And in Taurus too, the guide is the horai. The horai were a personification or a manifestation of the seasons. So learning what the right season is for what we're doing, and right timing, right pacing. Stellar Rendition says, and accommodating for the size the tree will become, which seems like many don't take into consideration. Great point, Stella. We're struggling with that right now, because the kind of tendency for beginning gardeners and gardeners of life is we plant all these seeds and we overplant them. With big trees, you could plant them way too close together, and then eventually they don't grow into their full size or their full potential because they're competing for resources with those other trees. Think about that, about planting too many seeds in too many projects. If you try to do too many things, you're probably choking off the ability for your most important projects to grow to their full potential. So I love the metaphor here too. When you're gardening, you have to be disciplined and leave space. Okay, what I'm trying to figure this equation out right now, Stella, is I have these native black cherries. They were given away at this really wonderful event at the park near us by sort of these guerrilla anarchist tree distribution folks, which they're awesome. They're just a group of people in our neighborhood that are trying to I don't know, do some good in the world by distributing trees that are native to our area. It's really cool. They're really nice folks. And I think that the black cherry, for example, grows to be 50 to 100 feet tall and has a wide spread of its branches and leaves. So trying to find space for a 100-foot tall tree eventually is really challenging sometimes when you have limited space. So take that energy and put it into your projects too. Try to anticipate how big a project could grow, how much time it's going to consume, how much resources you're going to have to put into it. I got myself in a lot of trouble with this last year when I was trying to heal my space and turn it back into a natural habitat, but also a food forest. I was really ambitious. We ordered way too many trees, and we vastly underestimated the time it would take to prepare the space and prepare the garden. And we inevitably ran into some obstacles. We ran into hundreds and hundreds of pounds of concrete blocks that had been buried in the space that we wanted to plant the trees. And we just spent weeks digging these, beach ball sized pieces of concrete out of the ground to plant these trees. And that wasn't something we anticipated, and it really set us back, right? So leave space in your life during Taurus for growth. Leave space though for things that you don't anticipate. And that's going to help us when we get to Taurus 3. You probably have less things to clean up in Taurus 3 if you take this good advice in Taurus 2 and leave some space. In the Pit says, just found this card on my way to work a couple days ago. Yeah, it's a good message. It's a message from the universe talking about finding balance between work and play, also between giving and receiving. Taurus is a sign that is a yin Venus sign. It is saying a lot of times people with Taurus placements are just like, I'm just going to sit and be patient and I'll get everything I need. With the universe is just going to bring it to us. That is a good way of being a lot of the time in the world. Sometimes the flip side of that is a Taurus E-type might have to learn how to pursue something that they really want and get over the inertia, right? Like a 1,000-pound bull that's sitting underneath a tree and sunning themselves with the flowery fields. Sometimes they have to get up and move to a new pasture. If they stay in that pasture and all the food is gone, they're going to starve. And this is true for a lot of people that want consistency, but are forced to make changes in their life. So finding that balance is really important. So a good message from the universe. Stella says, I've encountered obstacles like that too, but instead of rocks, it was creatures destroying everything that had been started. Mars ruled third house. We're going through that too, Stella. We planted a number of like blueberry bushes and native red oyster dogwood bushes. And we didn't have enough chicken wire last year to create like barriers for rabbits. And they just destroyed, half of the bushes. Like they were browsing and it's all like young wood. And so we might have to replace some of them. So yeah, I've been there too. It's really frustrating. We're kind of, before we plant these new trees, we're making sure that we have all the materials to protect them properly before we put them in the ground. That's the planning part of Taurus 1. As I'm recording this, we're in Taurus 1 season. So use this time before the beginning of May to really plan things out for success. And you're going to be gathering the resources you need so that you can plant the seeds successfully and protect them. Okay. So that's going to be at the period of time between April 30th and May the 10th. So let's take a look at what might be playing out during that period of time. We start off that period of time with a full moon in Scorpio. So let me bring up the chart. You can kind of take a look at this just so you can just have a little bit of a reference. So what we're going to do is I'm going to share my screen here, and we're going to see this on the chart. There we go. So here is the beginning. Let's go to the beginning of the month. We're still in April here. Bear with me. So here's May 1st, okay? And you could see here we've got this full moon on May 1st, 11 degrees of Taurus, opposite 11 degrees Scorpio. A couple features with this full moon. It is in a whole sign square with Pluto, so we may feel like we're pulled in a lot of different directions because of the challenges that are going on socially and collectively. So think about like you want to plant a garden or you want to start some material projects, but materials are much more expensive because of political unrest, because of war, because of trade routes being cut off, because of gas being expensive, because of all these things that are outside of our control. So this might be a point in time where we're trying to maybe pare back some of those things and get clear about what we can't do, because there's some of the things that are out of our control. And that helps us to put our energy in the things that we can do. So I don't think that we have to give up all of our projects, all of our dreams, all of those things. But there are certain times in life where we really can't control everything in the environment. And sometimes there are forces greater than our individual desires that cause us to change course a little bit. Some of those things they're not our fault, really. Like there's things that we couldn't possibly anticipate too. Some things we can. I mean, this is a deeper philosophical conversation as far as like how much control we have over political things and whether we can anticipate those things or not. And we try to figure that out through the language of astrology here. But for the average citizen, these are games that are being played by rich men over excessive wealth, and it's really stupid. And I think that what we're trying to figure out here at this full moon is what types of things can we carry out? What kind of seeds can we plant? Is the soil fertile? And is there things that we need to release? Let's see. Scorpio, yes, exactly, in the pit. Now, this full moon is also setting off a number of conditions. I'll show you what I mean by that. First thing that it sets off is a benefic enclosure of Mars. So here is Mars at 16 degrees of Aries, and it is making a, let's see, we have Venus casting its ray at 9 degrees of Gemini on the inside of Saturn right here, okay? And then we also have Jupiter casting its ray at 19 degrees Cancer on the other side of Mars. So do you see how we have these two planets trying to send their good energy, send their good significations, their benefits on either side of Mars? Now this gets kicked off with the sextile between Venus and Saturn, because Venus is going to sextile Saturn and then its ray is cast inside of Saturn. Does that make sense? So this is something that is going to help protect our ability, Mars in Aries, second decan, to take action on our personal belief systems, right? So if we take Mars, action. If we take Mars, like, saying, I'm going to do it. I'm going to move forward with this. The second decan of Aries saying, these are my values. This is my royal decree. This is what I'm all about. We may have some protection from Venus and Jupiter for stating our own values, for putting ourselves out there, for doing something that's in our personal best interest rather than in maybe someone else's best interest. Now, this can have its consequences too. Think about like world leaders acting in this way, where they're acting in their own best interest rather than in the best interest of the collective. And they may have protection for some of the most horrific things that they might brought upon the collective doing so. So there's benefits and there's drawbacks, as with everything in the world and in astrology. Now that is one enclosure. The other enclosure that gets kicked off by this is the malefic enclosure of Venus. So here we've got Venus at 9 degrees of Gemini. It's kind of like this cross-pollination thing. It's really weird. We've got Saturn. Once Venus makes the sextile to Saturn, it is now inside the two rays of Mars and Saturn. So Mars is casting its ray on one side, Saturn on the other. So Venus is going to be kind of held in check, I guess you could say. What might this mean for Venus? So first of all, Venus is a planet that likes to harmonize. It likes to take two things that are separated and bring them together, just like Mars likes to sever things that are together and split them apart. When we have this pressure from Mars and Saturn in Aries, our personal desires, our very subjective worldviews, viewpoints, etc., actions that we take with Mars, Saturn, our feelings of responsibility or like being forced to go off on our own. That's what Saturn in Aries is doing in a lot of circumstances. It's saying, man, I didn't really want to make this new start, but circumstances have said, I got to make a new start, right? It is also bringing a reckoning to toxic masculinity, to excess of yang energy, I guess you could say as well. So what kind of pressure might those planets be putting on Venus in Gemini? Well, Venus in Gemini Venus is now in the house of Mercury, a sign of communication, a sign of asking questions, a sign of seeing things from multiple viewpoints. Those two planets in Aries may be putting a lot of pressure on our ability to see things from multiple perspectives because we are so fixated on our own perspective. Again, this could be reflected in the collective with people who are power brokers in society, and it can be reflected on an individual level in our own personal lives. So one of the things that's probably going to be challenging is that we might feel so much pressure to act out our own best interest because we're feeling forced to, that it may make it difficult for us to see the other bits of information that would complete the puzzle. that would help us to find common ground with other people. I'm someone who has Venus and Gemini, and I like communicating with lots of different people. I like hearing different stories from people all over the world and different perspectives, and then trying to harmonize those things to find the core essence that unites people through those different experiences. And we may have some a challenging time doing that with Venus and malefic enclosure. The fascinating thing about this is, and I'll show you this more when we get closer to that condition, but it's gonna be over. It's gonna continue when Venus moves into Cancer. So we'll talk about what the different challenges might be, but this is a really extended malefic enclosure of Venus because it's traveling in a way that will extend over sign boundaries. Once Venus moves into Cancer, it'll be a different challenge, but still a challenge nonetheless. Okay, so that's our full moon. I will do an entire live stream next week if everything works out well and there's no, like, heaven forbid, no thunderstorms or tornadoes or whatnot. Like, I'll try to do something maybe in the middle of next week as well. Maybe this Wednesday thing works out okay. And then we'll start maybe trying to get back on the Friday schedule the week after. That's my plan, but I'm experimenting. Maybe with Venus out of bounds. Venus is ruling my 10th house, midheaven. So maybe we're trying and experimenting with things that we normally wouldn't hear today. Okay, so as we move forward, so we've got that Mars and benefic enclosure. We've talked about that. We've talked about the potential for being able to assert ourselves and have maybe even be able to get away with some things that we wouldn't normally get away with in being able to assert our own individual perspectives. We talked about the malefic enclosure of Venus from the 1st to the 28th, where we might have difficulty harmonizing with other people. So the combination of those two things, what does that suggest to us? It's difficult to see things from someone else's perspective. It's difficult to compromise, especially in our communications. We also have a lot of support potentially for doing our own thing, for better or for worse. I tend to be someone who enjoys attempting to cooperate on a larger scale level. Sometimes I struggle with it because I have a little bit of a hermit tendency where I spend a lot of time alone, and trying to harmonize those things is not always the easiest for me, but it's at least a value that I attempt to put out into the world. And when we have all these planets stacked up in Aries, it's just, for those of us who try to bring, I guess, peace to the world and try to harmonize and value cooperation in communities and communal efforts, the Aries energy can feel really boorish. It can feel really uncomfortable. That being said, every single zodiac sign and planet has its purpose. And in this case, initiating something is very important. This big Aries stellium that we saw in this past week helped express a lot of anger that is happening in the collective. We saw, man, we saw all sorts of things going on. We saw basically someone blow up set a big warehouse, an Amazon warehouse on fire. We saw someone throw a Molotov cocktail into Sam Altman's house, the CEO of OpenAI, ChatGPT. We also saw Mercury in malefic enclosure. With that, we were talking about this last broadcast about how this could have a real impact on both President Trump and Pete Hegseth's natal Mercury. It was squaring those. There is some chatter out there that Trump wanted to use the nuclear codes, and that the highest ranking military official said no. That's a pretty, I would say, striking example of malefic enclosure of Mercury, where someone is wanting to act on their worst impulses. In this case, Trump's 12th house Mercury, wanting to literally destroy a civilization, and then someone intervening and saying, no, you're not going to be allowed to do that. That was an interesting thing that came out. The CEO of and the leadership of Palantir, Peter Thiel, and I can't remember the other guy that's in charge over there. They released basically their techno-fascist manifesto, like where they're outlining their 22 points of like how they're going to try to use AI technology to become a surveillance state. That was disturbing, and something that was people are angry about. So there's some righteous indignation that is coming out of the Aries energy, where people are kind of tired of abuse, and it gives you the energy to fight back. It gives you the energy to say, no, I'm not going to take this anymore, right? No, this is wrong, and I need to stand up for this. Now, the important thing is that we don't get just stuck in that initiating energy, and then we actually sustain the impulse to make change through the different parts of the zodiac. Just like a seed would burst through the ground and needs that extra yang energy to bust through the crust of the soil to start spreading its leaves. It doesn't just keep bursting through the soil. Eventually, once it has burst through the soil, it starts growing roots. It starts stabilizing underground. That's where we move into the Taurus energy. We're laying foundations. We're stabilizing the new plant. If you just had spindly growth that happens, and this is a metaphor for political movements as well. If you just have like spindly, angry energy that doesn't root in actual fundamental foundational changes, it's going to burn out and it's going to fall over. It's going to flop over. Just like the plant that would grow too spindly without a root structure would also collapse. So this is something to think about as we move into Taurus season, is how do we utilize that burst of energy, but then help to stabilize that into real change versus just this expression of anger that just fizzles out because we can't sustain that in our nervous system over time. Really important concept. And I think nature is the greatest teacher to me when it comes to these astrological movements, because I see things through the language of nature. I see that through my experience as someone who's planted seeds, seen them get spindly with too much light, too much fire, and then flop over. You need just the right amount, right? This is why we pace ourselves. Now, as we get to the second, we're going to start seeing Mercury moving into Taurus. So here is Mercury moving into Taurus, the second into the third. Now here's Mercury in the first decan of Taurus. This is interesting because the rhetoric, right? The Aries rhetoric, or the fiery, bombastic communication style might start to settle down a little bit with Mercury in Taurus. There's a secondary dignity to Mercury in the first 10 degree section of Taurus. It has decanic dignity. So basically that means it's a mask that the sign of Venus is putting on. It's putting on a mercurial mask. We may have an enhanced ability with Mercury in Taurus first decan to plan for our material security moving forward, to ask questions of what we have and then also what we need. Okay, so you can't get what you need unless you understand what you have, right? And that'll make your pursuit of it much more effective. So that's Mercury moving into Taurus. Now, when we get to the 4th, we have another kind of big day here, all right? So this is another big shift, the 4th. Mars will square Jupiter. So you have Mars and Jupiter squared here on May the 4th. May the 4th be with you if you celebrate Star Wars. I actually have a Star Trek shirt on today. I'm boldly going wherever where no man has gone before on a Wednesday. I like wearing this shirt on Wednesdays because it feels like I'm an explorer. I'm a mercurial explorer out in the world with my Star Trek shirt on. So Mars is going to be making that square to Jupiter, and that is ending the benefic enclosure of Mars. Okay, so once Mars makes that movement past Jupiter, Jupiter is no longer casting its ray and enclosing Mars any longer. So two things can happen, and they're going to be, obviously they're going to be related, right? So Mars is going to run into, from Aries, okay, from the decan and the degree of the sun's exaltation, where we're saying, this is what I want. And it's going to run right into exalted Jupiter that says, well, what's good for the group? All right. Mars is in the overcoming square in traditional astrology, which means it's sort of in the more powerful position. So the good of the group, the good of the family, could be harmed by our overly aggressive individual desires. And at this point, this is just a thought that's coming into my mind, an intuition. Let's say that we are taking actions that are very in service of a selfish desire with Mars and Aries. And then those actions are protected by Venus and Jupiter for a span of about 3 days. We get a wild hair. We're like, I'm going to do this, and I don't give a shit what anyone else thinks. I don't care what my family thinks. I don't care what the voters think. I don't care what Congress thinks. I'm just going to do this thing. And then the square with Jupiter happens, and there's no longer the support for that. There's no longer the protection for that wild hair anymore. So you might have something in your own personal life where you're saying, hey, I really want to do this and I don't care what anyone else thinks. And then it runs right into how damaging it could be for the people in your life. How damaging that individualistic wild hair could be to the sanctity and the safety and the security of the collective, of the family, of the people you care about. So that square between Mars and Jupiter to me is a wake-up call, is a reality check to Mars that says, hey, you might need to take other people's needs into consideration. It's the end of a benefic enclosure of Mars. You may need to slow down a little bit. You may need to have some patience with this. You're not going to just be able to start every single project. Sometimes you need to protect the things that you have already started, because if you don't nurture them, if you don't work with others to nurture something that you strongly believe in and get other people on board with, you're not going to have support when inevitably you need the support of other people. When inevitably, after the seedling bursts through the soil and then puts down roots, it needs bees, it needs pollinators to come and visit the flowers that it puts out to be able to continue on in its life cycle. So do you see how we move from the seed bursting through the soil to putting roots down, from Aries to Taurus, and then from Taurus to Gemini, we're pollinating. It's all there. Then with the Cancer phase, we're fruiting, all right? And then the fruits are eaten in Leo, and then those seeds fall back, are harvested and maybe put back into the ground and planted again for the next cycle. It's all part of a cycle, okay? So don't get stuck in the Aries part of it, and don't get blinded by your own subjective viewpoint. And I'm saying this to politicians as well. Don't get blinded by your own specific worldview / personal desire / bets on Polymarket. I can't believe we're living in this fucking timeline where we literally have politicians that are making giant bets on when we're going to go to war or all of these things. And everybody's just sitting around like, huh, yeah, that's kind of becoming a pattern and letting people get away with it. That's just such an egregious abuse of power that I sometimes I just have to kind of laugh and bow my head into the microphone about it, right? So my plea to those politicians is, you were elected to do a service for your community. You are an avatar for the desires of your voters, not for putting money into your own pocket. Return back to taking actions that are in service of the collective and be a public servant, which is what the definition of a politician is, not being a self-servant. So hopefully somebody will hear that today on Earth Day. Venus is also going to be out of bounds on the 4th of May. Venus is going to be going in that condition that we talked about earlier, right after it stops enclosing Mars. This is when we still have Venus being enclosed by Mars and Saturn, but now it's out of bounds. So now it's even like the pressure that Venus must feel being enclosed by the two malefic planets, Here's how I could see this playing out. We're just storytelling here. This is one of the things that I love about astrology is you can take those symbols and you create stories around it. The stories they may have different expressions, but we tell stories so that you can take that story and apply some of the similar themes and metaphors to your own life. Here's one thing I could see with this. Let's say that on the full moon, at the beginning of the malefic enclosure of Venus, you realize that it's very difficult to communicate because people are very stuck in their own subjective worldview. So what you will have to do is you will have to think completely outside of the normal Venusian communication ways to create the type of connection that you want to connect and that you want to achieve. This is forcing Venus to think outside the box. This malefic enclosure is forcing Venus to be innovative, to not necessarily follow the rules of society. This to me could be like another thought popping into my head. We've seen pushback on the President of the United States recently by his own generals, by people in Congress, by other people that may have more sanity. I could see a desire, like him wanting to go do something, and people in the government having to use subterfuge to achieve the goal of peace or the goal of not completely destroying the world through nuclear war. Do you see what I'm saying? Like having to maybe have negotiations behind the scenes, maybe even having to take actions that the president doesn't know about, because if he knows about it, he's going to tweet something stupid and like destroy the types of normal interactions that non-malignant narcissists have with each other when they're trying to discuss international policy. When you have someone who is a malignant narcissist who is descending into dementia, when they tweet something out that they're going to threaten a civilization with annihilation, that can throw a wrench in peace negotiations. So I could see something like that, where we're having to go outside the normal channels of communication to be able to achieve the bringing together of diverse perspectives. This could also be happening in your own life. There could be something where you're feeling a lot of pressure from the Aries part of your life, or maybe other people who have very selfish desires, and you have to go outside of the normal ways of creating harmony with people. And that could feel really uncomfortable because it's not natural, right? It's something that we're not accustomed to. And when we go outside of our comfort zones, that can sometimes be very liberating, but it can also sometimes be very like, oh man, it's extra effort. All right, so that is the end of the benefic enclosure of Mars and the beginning of the Venus out of bounds period that is going to be active all the way until June 7th, okay? That's the 4th. That is Monday, May the 4th. Okay, let's keep going. Before we keep going, I'm going to take a little stretch break. Do me a huge favor, friends. If you're hanging out with me today, please like the video. Subscribe if you're new. Turn on the notification bell. And if you could do me a favor, sign up for the email list, because sometimes I'm going to go live on a different day, just because circumstances. Usually I go live most often on Friday afternoons, sometimes on a Thursday in a rare case, every once in a while on a Saturday. We're doing things on a Wednesday here because I had planned to do this broadcast last Friday, but we had some severe weather in our area that really disrupted my sleep patterns. We had some late night tornadoes that came within about 5 miles of our house, and it was really scary, and it kind of messed me up for a couple days, because I don't know about you, but once you are of a certain age, if you are up at between 1 and 4 o'clock in the morning, it kind of throws you off for a few days, and it's really difficult to get back on track sometimes. So that's what happened last week. But I appreciate your patience. I appreciate you hanging out here with me today on a different day. So thank you for liking the video, for subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you. All right, so let's get back into it. We got stretched out. We stretched our hips out a little bit. We got a drink of water. When we go on these longer broadcasts, it's nice to take care of our bodies. We're really in our brains and in our minds, but keeping our bodies healthy and functioning well is good too. So let's talk about the 5th. So here is the 5th of May. And for those of you who follow along afterwards, like, here's the thing. You can follow along the whole entire broadcast, but you can come back to this, right? You can come back and watch little pieces as it happens to maybe start to absorb some of the events in your life in the context of the astrology. That's why I like to do it like this. It's on some level, it's kind of a public service to say, hey, maybe this will help somebody to make a better choice in the moment, or to understand what they're going through in the moment. And yes, it is a lot of information, and it's going lengthy at times, but I don't necessarily intend for you to absorb all of the pieces today, but maybe come back to it. That's always a good thing to do too. So on May 5th, we have Mercury making one of the first squares to Pluto. So Mercury is going to square Pluto, and then I believe Mars is going to square it at the end of the month. So Mercury square Pluto, communications that could be revealing the conflict that is to come at the end of the month. So pay attention to the communications that you receive, whether it is through the collective or the news or through things in your own life, because it could be revealing something that would need to be dealt with at the end of the month when Mars squares Pluto. Now, if we were to craft a story or a narrative around this, utilizing all of the different themes and symbols, Mercury asks questions. It is a planet that moves between realms. It is a planet of commerce. It's a planet of communication. It is swift in its movements. It pops in and out of visibility quite often. Now, Mercury is strong in Taurus. It's strong in the first decan of Taurus. So it is very strong because it is in its own face. It has dignity by its own face. So there are lots of questions asked about resources. Remember we called it the Lord of Worry. And the worry is, I don't want to be poor, so I better make some plans, right? I don't want to go hungry, so I better make some plans. So when Mercury is squaring Pluto, that worry is going to be running straight into the corruption that's happening in the bigger, larger society. So something might be revealed that causes people to feel worried about their financial security, about their financial stability. This is when some of the really challenging price increases might start hitting Western cultures. I know that this has happened. I was reading an article about South Korea, and they're basically doing rationing of driving and oil and gas because a lot of their supplies have gotten cut off with the Strait of Hormuz being shut down, and they're doing almost like food and energy rationing like we haven't seen since the 1970s. That hasn't quite that level. You also aren't allowed to drive one business day of the week now too. That level of austerity has not hit the United States or Canada yet, from what I know. But there might be some things like that coming because of the delayed reaction with the Western culture. So keep an eye on that. It's not meant to scare you. It's meant to just prepare you. Some things are going to be bigger than us and out of our control. And if it were me, I would start paring back to prepare for that. This is not a time in history to be excessive with your resources, to be impulsive with them. To me, it's a good time to save. To me, it's a good time to plant your garden, and maybe take some of the chaos and turn it into order, right? This is a great time to plant a garden because maybe if food starts to get a little bit more expensive, maybe you can mitigate that a little bit by growing some of your own. But even if it's just a pot or a container on your porch or something like that. But also it's a good time to plan for being able to plan for when times might get a little bit more difficult, because that Mars-Pluto square, that's the time where I think things might get a little sticky financially, like maybe with markets or things like that. Garnet is here. Garnet born. Nice. Ooh, that's a cool name, Garnet born. I'm assuming that might be, is that January, right? Is that the birthstone of January, Garnet? I could be mistaken, but I'm also thinking of Garnet from Steven Universe, which is a cool character in Steven Universe. Stella says, much appreciation to your service and gifts, Spencer. I appreciate you for being here too, Stella. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out, and just appreciate you and the connection we've been able to make through this this format. Okay. So Mercury square Pluto, the 5th of May. That's the same day that Uranus is going under the beams of the sun. Now, I was saying earlier that this is a little bit of a controversial technique, right? Stella says, yes, Capricorn is garnet tin in some systems. There you go. So maybe garnet born is a Capricorn, or maybe even an Aquarius potentially. So here is the, let's just include Uranus here. Let's do that here. So the same day that Mercury squares Pluto, we have Uranus at 15 degrees of separation exactly from the sun at 15 degrees of Taurus. Now, it's a little bit of a controversial technique because traditional astrology, in some ways, they do not recognize those outer planets using traditional techniques. We tend to play a little bit loose with that here on this channel. As a Venus and Gemini native, I try not to get too hard and fast about backing myself into a technique corner, especially when I have observed some of these things happening in real time. So let's try to apply a traditional technique to a modern planet. Let's just experiment with it. Let's see if it works. Let's see if there's something that is spoken to from maybe the Mercury-Pluto square, and also Uranus moving underneath the beams of the sun. Now, generally, when a planet moves under the beams of the sun, it is taking to its sickbed or going into the furnace, the solar furnace of renewal. Generally, this is a moment of phasis. And a moment of phasis, according to Robert Schmidt, the great Hellenistic astrologer from Project Hindsight, says it is an omen that speaks. It is an omen that speaks. So some shocking communication, some shocking technological kind of crisis. Oftentimes when a planet's going under the beams of the sun, it's a crisis point. It's a problem that is needing to be solved. It's a dissolving of old structures. Uranus going into Gemini and going under the beams of the sun seems like almost like a shocking breakdown in transportation systems, like maybe ships being able to deliver resources, of internet connections, of communication things, something breaking down that leads to thoughts of scarcity because of corruption in the bigger picture. Does that make sense? How we're trying to weave a tapestry of meaning, of potential meaning? Now, I will say this, when we are doing this exercise of trying to figure out potential meanings through this, we aren't always accurate. We're trying to think in the storyteller's mind. We don't always get it perfect. That's why we give a wave of possibilities. But to me, this is a breakdown of Gemini type communications, getting ready for the birth of something new, right? Gemini gets things from one place to another. It helps us to break down something complicated into bite-sized, manageable pieces. So there could be also a really interesting manifestation of this could be the breakdown of something that was in a big piece into multiple little pieces. The thing that comes to mind is monopolies, like tech monopolies, communication monopolies. I wouldn't be surprised if during this Uranus solar cycle, we see the breakup of some big tech monopolies. We've already seen rulings against monopolies like Ticketmaster and Live Nation. I believe there was a huge merger. I don't know if it's gone through or not with Warner Brothers and Netflix, and then Paramount tried to do like a hostile takeover. There could be some breakup with some of those media organizations because Gemini media, like getting news and things like that. So keep your eyes peeled for that, because whatever is breaking down, there is going to be something new forming, maybe even behind the scenes when Uranus is in Cazimi of the sun on the 22nd. So connect this date, the 5th, with the 22nd. Okay, let's look back on this revisionist wise and say, hey, what are we looking at here? Okay, let's go forward. Let's go forward to the 6th. Let's see what we got here. Isn't it fascinating that we have these trigger events and then planets switch directions? So we've got Mercury squaring Pluto, Uranus going under the beams of the sun, and then the next day, Pluto stations retrograde. A review of some of the things that have been revealed, the corruption that's been revealed, taking back of some of the significations, usually is sometimes a retrograde thing. Maybe there's some corruption that was revealed by the Mercury-Pluto square. Okay, maybe there's some communications and some breakdowns in some bigger organizations that leads to a review of those organizations and say, wait a minute, you can't keep moving forward in this way. You can't keep pushing things underground. We're going to have to deal with this. So hopefully it helps and leads to dealing with some of the things that are revealed with Pluto stationing retrograde. There's going to be some interesting Pluto things later on in the year too, with Pluto going out of bounds. So Pluto's going to be retrograde from 5 degrees of Aquarius on the 6th of May, squared Mercury, sextile Neptune, and it stations direct at 3 degrees of Aquarius on October the 15th. So this is a longer cycle of review. When it stations direct, it's going to square a retrograde Venus, and it's going to trine a retrograde Uranus and sextile Neptune again. It is also, during this retrograde period, going to move out of bounds from August the 11th to December the 10th. Okay. There's some really powerful astrology while Pluto is going out of bounds. Those dates also marry up with the new moon solar eclipse at 20 degrees of Leo on August the 12th, right after Pluto goes out of bounds. And then Saturn stationing direct at 7 degrees of Aries on December the 10th, the same day that Pluto goes back in bounds. Now, what do we make of all that? One thing that we can think about with Pluto out of bounds, historically, Pluto out of bounds has coincided with two things. When it is in its northern declination out of bounds, it's the rise of the power of tyrants. Okay, it's the abuse of power by like fascist dictators, the use of atomic weapons, things of that nature, right? When Pluto goes out of bounds in the southern declination, that is often signifying an uprising of the people, of rebellion, power to the people. Like think about like French Revolution type stuff, right? So what I think that there is a literal and virtual and emotional and societal powder keg that is gaining steam right now. People are upset. People are angry. People are realizing that there is a stratification of two different rules for two different classes of people, for the billionaire Epstein class and for everyone else. And people are starting to get fed up with it. Even President Trump's own base, even his own MAGA base, right, are starting to become fed up with his obvious corruption. People are waking up from the illusion and the dream. And when they start waking up from that illusion and then that dream, they're going to be pretty pissed off because they're going to realize that it's been one of the greatest wealth grabs in the history of any government on the planet. And what they're doing is they're taking out of your pocket and putting it into the wealthy class and making them exponentially richer, and doing it through horrific acts of violence, through greed and gambling, betting on policy bets. When that kind of thing happens and enough people start waking up to it and feel the pinch of that, I think in a Western civilization, we're a little bit insulated from some of that, the worst of that. Not a little bit, we're a lot insulated from that because we have externalized costs. We've externalized violence, we've externalized poverty, we've externalized hunger. We've externalized it to other nations while to support our own illusion of comfort. When those things eventually boomerang back on you, this is the imperialist boomerang that we learn about in economic history. That's when revolutions start. That's when the same type of actions that have been wrought upon other countries start to boomerang back on the country that is rotting them, like fascist control, like surveillance state, like kleptocracy, stealing from other cultures' resources to benefit the wealthy country. When they start stealing from their own citizens, even more egregiously than they already have, that's when people start to get fed up with that. And then you see Pluto out of bounds, and you see the seeds of rebellion and revolution taking place. So that's coming. I've seen a lot of people that have started to get much more vocal. You've seen people that are speaking truth to power, especially to toxic masculinity and the patriarchy and the abuse of, really the abuse of women as well, but also the abuse of this beautiful planet, which in many cultures is seen as a female, feminine, yin kind of being. So I think that there's a rebalancing that's taking place. And I hope so. This is something you learn in Taoist philosophy. When things go to an extreme, the seed of its opposite is planted. That's what you see in that yin-yang symbol. You see in that light is continually turning into dark, and the seed of darkness is in the light, and the seed of light is in the darkness. When we go to the extremes, there's this shift. When we're going to the extremes of wealth inequality, there might be a strong desire for equality and the actions that will bring that about. I'm here for it. I would love to see it in my lifetime. I also kind of hope that it's I don't even know if this is realistic anymore, but as somewhat of a pacifist, I hope that we can do it without people suffering. But we'll see. I think that ultimately the earth and the divine, there's a greater plan to all of this, and we're kind of players on a stage right now playing it all out. I do think we can make choices in the moment to mitigate some of the worst of it. And a lot of that comes through communal efforts and helping your neighbor and showing kindness and generosity to the people in your community. Maru is here, says, hi, Spencer. What a surprise to have this live today, Mercury Day. Yeah, nice to see you, Maru. Thank you for joining us from Germany via Argentina, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, we're doing a little Mercury Day live today. Usually I do lives on Fridays, but we had some severe weather in my area, and had to take in a couple extra days. There was a lot to prepare for May, and I just need a couple extra days. So that's why we're doing Wednesday here today. Probably won't go live this Friday, but I think I might try this again next week. Maybe we'll do Wednesday again next week and see if that works out. Lauren is here. Painted Turtle says, I always feel my Pluto out of bounds public service message to Indigenous peoples, which is to stand your ground during these out of bounds periods, as they will test you and try you. Stay the course and keep the land. Absolutely. Lauren says, many data centers trying to push on Indigenous lands of late. Ooh. Oh, this is me a deep breath feeling another rant coming on. Like, well, I maybe I'll spare the rant today, but needless to say, that makes me upset. I am very, very anti-AI for a number of reasons, which I won't launch into again today. It makes me even more angry that they are stealing from people that have traditionally just been stolen from over and over again. And I definitely am in solidarity with the indigenous folks of this land and of lands of this world, and hope that we can help to restore, just some dignity, right? And restore their lands and restore the things that have been taken away through abusive colonization and late stage capitalism, or just capitalism in general. There's a really beautiful worldview in a lot of indigenous myth and cultures, and I hope that we can learn from them, because really the takeaways from my limited but very enthusiastic, I guess, viewings of those stories is there is this balance and harmony and equilibrium to being good caretakers of this planet. And I think in many indigenous cultures around the world, they understood how fragile that balance and that homeostasis is, and that we as human beings have to be participants in restoring and maintaining that balance, rather than just viewing this world as a garden of earthly delights that's here just to serve every whim and desire that we have. It is a mutual relationship that we have with people, that we have with this earth. On Earth Day, We are caretakers of this earth. It's not here to just be our quote unquote resource. These are gifts that this mother, that this lover has given us. And being able to change into a lover rather than a child, I think, is one of the things that I think Robin Wall Kimmerer talks a lot about in her great books, Braiding Sweetgrass and The Serviceberry, and authors of that ilk. When we are in a relationship with someone, we take care of it. We don't just receive, because this earth has given us so many beautiful gifts. But we need to start giving those gifts back. We need to start treating it as a lover rather than just as a mother that gives and gives and gives and gives, which is this. Our mother is spent right now. The planet is spent. And it's because we've taken and taken and taken and never even thought about giving back to it, right? Maru says, yes, I'm hearing all this and about to take legal actions to defend my rights here in Germany. Amen, sister. Go for it. I would love to keep on doing what you need to do. Like push back on the authoritarianism. Ben Wright is here. What's up, Ben Wright? Good friend over from my days in Kalamazoo. Hope you're doing well, Ben. Says they are our teachers and we must adapt to their ways. I'm assuming that's in reference to indigenous cultures. I agree. First peoples on this planet on some level, right? And we're just trying to learn how to be good citizens of this planet. And when you have cultures that have survived for tens of thousands of years, you should take some notes rather than only following the guidance of cultures that have been around for maybe a couple hundred years. There's a reason why they were able to survive for so long. And we are destroying the planet in our youthful exuberance. Sacred Economics talks about this too. Charles Eisenstein talks about, that's who it was. Charles Eisenstein talks about becoming a lover to the earth rather than just a child. We are getting to the point where we need some spiritual maturity. And these indigenous cultures have gone through that process already. And that's a lot of what we can learn from them, is how do we become spiritually mature in our relationship to this planet and to each other. So yeah, I agree. We definitely must adapt and adopt their ways. Mutual nurturing, Stella says. Absolutely. Maro says, lover earth. I love it. Yeah, right? We oftentimes we say Mother Earth, but I love this. Lover earth. Maybe we should start a new hashtag trend or some, maybe not a hashtag because it's part of the same algorithms, but lover earth. I love that. Let's start normalizing that. You know, I think that's a great way to start changing a narrative by, instead of saying, oh, Mother Gaia, no, lover Gaia, right? Because we care about what happens to her. We care about her well-being equally, or if not more than our own. So Stella says, such a huge loss of reverence of earth. It's so sad. Yeah, one other thing we should talk about today before we move forward on this is there is some legislation that is being voted on today that would encodify the quote unquote God squad in American politics, where there is this group of legislators that basically have the power to decide, well, it's a part of the environmental EPA or something like that. They have the power to decide whether a species lives or dies or goes extinct. And it's been very rare when they have been able to meet, you know, for good reason. We shouldn't have the power to decide whether a species goes out of existence or not because we want to profit. But they're taking away some of the boundaries that make that type of power even more powerful, where that God squad would be meeting more and more, deciding whether to choose profit over a species' entire existence. That to me is just so god awfully disgusting, that we would choose profit and our own benefit over some entire species' right to inhabit this planet with us as our brothers and sisters. It's disgusting. So if you have any influence today, talk to your politicians. Hopefully they can see some of this and vote to maintain the sanctity of life on this earth, and that we're all related in that way. All right. So that's Pluto stationing retrograde. That brings us to our last quarter moon on the 9th of May, right? We've got 19 degrees moon that is going to square the sun in Taurus. Before I get to that, Lauren says, oh my God, there's a beautiful band interview of 1876, an indigenous rock band on an Oregon Public Broadcasting YouTube. Gabe Kalhoff has a lot of good things to say. Beautiful band interview of 1876. Oh, so that's the name of the band, 1876, an indigenous rock band. We'll have to check that out. Listen to your indigenous brothers and sisters. Listen to what they have to say. Follow their lead, right? So, yeah, check that out. Oregon Public Broadcasting, YouTube, Gabe Kalhoff. All right, good turn on there. Okay, good. All right, so this last quarter moon, 19 degrees of Aquarius. That is the decan of Aquarius that's associated with the Six of Swords, where you will see a person being ferried across a river from one shore to another. So if I find this here in my cards, so we've got this, here it is. So this is the Six of Swords, where you see someone being punted or ferried across. And it's going to be squaring the sun in this decan of Six of Pentacles with the ability to pace ourselves, right? The ability to give and receive. To me, this is really the conflict of wanting to move on in a situation and move into a new situation and wanting to put down roots. So we may have to let go of our desire to keep moving and moving and moving, because it's last quarter. We're reducing the qualities of the moon to achieve the purpose of the sun. So if we want to create stability, if we want to put down roots, we may have to turn down those impulses to keep moving, to keep trying to, this decan's called the Lord of, it's called Science. The Lord of Science. We may have to think about whether we need to keep progressing technologically, whether we need to keep always growing more. Nature teaches us that it's a cycle. It's not just growing exponentially. There are times where there's reduction. There's time where there's hibernation. There's time where there's death on the planet. And sometimes we have to accept things being maybe either not just stagnant, but resting and letting go of things. It's one of the most dangerous human ideas, is the myth of progress. That is the enemy of the health of the planet. And I think if we could start telling a new narrative that our goal as human beings is not to keep progressing, quote unquote. Our goal of human beings is to restore harmony and balance to this planet as maybe the neurons, the brains of the planet. Now, I sometimes wonder if we really are that smart. I mean, with the actions that we've taken. Intelligence takes on a lot of different forms. But how do we start restoring harmony and balance rather than falling into the Wendigo mindset? Wendigo mindset is a word I've learned from indigenous author Robin Wall Kimmerer, who is a biologist and a indigenous, I guess, elder, you could call her at this point. It's the greed that is unchecked. The Wendigo was a monster in indigenous culture that could never be satisfied. And in the billionaire Epstein class, we have a bunch of Wendigos that have been unleashed on the world. And that was a story that was told to talk about the destructive power of greed. If you're in a subsistence community that lives off the land where resources might be limited in different seasons based on the limitations of just that space itself, if you have someone who's taking more than they need and destroying things wantonly, that endangers the entire community. And that's the same thing with the greed in the Wendigo billionaire class. Their unchecked greed is endangering our entire earthly community. So interesting to think about, how can we start telling a different story of what it means to progress? And we might be thinking about those questions specifically at this last quarter moon on May the 9th. Stellar Rendition says, love her earth. She literally holds us as the ground we stand on. I love it. We definitely need to start making that into our zeitgeist nomenclature shared language. Stella says, healing could also be looked at as the goal of this life. I agree. I think this is different human beings or types of people, I think, incarnate on the planet for different purposes at different times. I think that our generation has incarnated to be healers. to be able to heal the damage that has been done over the Industrial Revolution and things of that nature, and to the unchecked capitalist system. I think that we are here to restore balance and harmony and equilibrium and to heal. And that's something that it's been a big shift in my own mindset, where I grew up in the late stage capitalist. You should always be ascending. You need to gain more power, recognition, resources. That's how you win the game. And learning how destructive that can be, learning to become a healer, learning to say, I don't need that. I reject that. I need to become a healer of this land. I need to plant some trees. I need to grow some vegetables. I need to reduce my consumption. Those are all excellent, I guess, ways of becoming, right? Rather than just growing. Becoming is a good word. Lauren says, we're so smart, we're so stupid. We are such experts on small things, we don't understand the whole anymore. Yep. The challenge of specialization. We don't have good generalists anymore. We don't have good polymaths anymore. This is something I've always inspired to be, as a polymath, like I guess a Renaissance person, where you be able to see the big picture and be know not just a little bit about a lot of things, but to be able to see how things connect with one another. We need to learn how to connect the dots again. All right, so that's the last aspect of Taurus 2. Now we move into the Sun in Taurus 3. Do me a huge favor, friends. At each of these kind of stopping points, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, take a stretch, get a drink of water. I'm so very grateful for you hanging out with me today. Thank you for joining me on a non-traditional day, Wednesday. I kind of like it. I feel the energy of Mercury coursing through my veins today. I feel like the words are coming in from my brain into my mouth easier, quicker than normal. I'm sure that some of you probably listen to my broadcast on 2 times speed, because sometimes I tend to talk slow, but not today. Today I'm on 1.5 speed, just naturally. Okay. Also, before I launch back into it, shameless plug. I'm having a sale right now, spring sale, 20% off all my readings and recordings until May the 1st. So if you need some extra guidance in this time, or you've been waiting and you wanted to do a reading, or you wanted to engage with the Decanic webinars or the Dignity and Devotion Planetary Magic webinars, all of it's 20% off until the 1st of May. Thank you for your support. Okay. Let's talk about Taurus 3. So Taurus 3, let's bring the Decan flashcard. Here is Taurus 3. Now, we move from the 6 of Pentacles to the 7 of Pentacles. Stella says, I only listen at fast speeds when I'm behind and trying to catch up to the live point. There you go. There you go. No shame if you have to listen faster. It's just me going a little bit quicker. Lauren says, surprisingly loving Saturn in Aries for its expression of its love for the dark. Municipalities changing streetlight systems to red lights to honor the bats who have trouble eating insects in... oh, interesting. That's cool. I like that. Restoring some natural light without getting have trouble eating insects in white light when they can't eat their fill. Farmers have to use more chemicals on the plants. Oh, you know, we've been doing that without getting too far down this tangent, because I got to keep going. But we've been using an orange light in our bedroom at night, so that we're not getting the blue light into our eyes, and it makes us sleepier. It helps us to come into alignment with the natural light that we would be experiencing when the sun's setting, right? So restoring little things like that can be really, really powerful. So that's a really cool manifestation. Okay, Sun in Taurus 3, May 10th to May the 20th. 20 degrees Taurus all the way to the beginning of Gemini, okay? Here we see the 7 of Pentacles. And we have a farmer or a gardener or someone who is working the land, leaning on his farming implement, his hoe, if you will, and assessing the damage to his crop. You can see here there's these brown streaks. going through the vines. Some say that this card was a reference to the potato famines of the 1840s when Pamela Coleman Smith was drawing this card in the early 1900s. She would have been familiar with those potato famines, being someone who grew up in the UK around that period of time, probably would have been old enough to know about that experience. So this is instructive. This is the Lord of failure, the Lord of success unfulfilled. Austin Coppock calls it a string of prayer beads, and there's a spirit in this decan called the Litai. The Litai were these hobbled old women that followed behind this rash demon, 8, that would step on the heads of mortals to get where he wanted to go. And the Litai would follow behind with repentant prayers. This is where the string of prayer beads part of Austin's book comes in. So this is the decan of fixing problems that may have come through impatience, through doing something and rushing the process. Maybe it's also through fixing something that is outside of your control. The other part about praying is that we're praying to a higher power. Sometimes there's higher powers that create destruction. Like, we don't necessarily have control over whether a tornado hits our house or not. Although we could make arguments that some of our actions are contributing to that through climate change. I know that in my area, Tornado Alley has started to creep farther north, and normally we didn't get tornadoes. We've already had like 25 or something like that in Michigan, very early in the process. So, but I digress. Just like the natural forces of weather could be out of our control, maybe we need to utilize the power of prayer to ask for a higher power to intervene to repair some of the damage. So that's where we get the Litai. Oftentimes you will see people that have Taurus 3 placements. Sometimes they will have early experiences in their life where they make some mistakes. Sometimes it's addiction. Sometimes it's just being an asshole. And a lot of them will find meditation. They'll find a spiritual practice, and that will help turn their life around, right? So yeah. Lauren says, gotta go, take care, love your cast, and it's public service, as you call it. You offer yourself, and it's so careful and smart and pure. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you for being here. Thank you for continuing to share your wisdom with us too. I hope you're having a wonderful Earth Day, and with Lover Earth today. So go get some sun and go smell some flowers and get into that garden, friend. All right. So yes, a lot of people with Taurus 3 placements will have a spiritual awakening of some sort where their life changes because they are repairing some damage that they've done. I guess one example that comes to mind, this is just a weird example from the media that I've been consuming. I've been watching a show. I just finished a show about a week or two ago called Cobra Kai. It's based on the Karate Kid movies. And you see the aftermath of both Daniel LaRusso, played by Ralph Macchio, and Johnny Lawrence, played by William Zabka. You start off really centering Johnny Lawrence's character after he's defeated in the All Valley Championship in 1984, and his life kind of goes in the opposite direction. He was the hot shot. Daniel was the up and comer. Daniel's life is like turned out really well in like the values of late stage capitalism. Like he owns like a car dealership. He has a beautiful family. He looks very wealthy in California. And Johnny Lawrence is kind of like falling on hard times. He's struggling with alcoholism. He lives in like a ratty apartment, and he's kind of getting his feet back underneath him. And a lot of it is through him growing as a person and surrendering to some of the balancing values that he learns from starting to work together with Daniel LaRusso, and vice versa. I would say also Daniel LaRusso learns the value of sometimes being a little bit more less conflict averse. Like that was the whole push and pull in that story. Was Miyagi always taught karate is for defense only, defense only, defense only, never be the aggressor. Cobra Kai's challenge was strike first, strike hard, no mercy. And the contrast between those two things really was made for some interesting conflict in television. But they learn from each other. They balance each other out. They surrender to each other's wisdom and maybe even on some level to a higher power. And when we have Taurus 3, we may identify things in our life that have gone wrong. This is an excess of materiality, right? It's an excess of earth. Maybe it's an excess of substance. Maybe it's an excess of food. I know in my case, when Jupiter and Uranus came together, I discovered that a certain type of sugar that I was consuming, it's called fructan, was making me feel sick, was making me feel nerve pain. And I always thought I was allergic to gluten, so I would not eat gluten stuff. But it was actually this fructan, and it came just randomly. Like the solution came randomly, like with Uranus, like out of the blue from just an article my partner saw. And I found this enzyme that helps digest it. It's called FODzyme. If you're, they should sponsor me at this point. I talk about it enough. But I'll tell you what, it was so life-changing and so healing that if I just continue to talk about FODzyme, that enzyme that helps to digest different sugars, and it alleviates some of the pain that someone else is going through, I'd be happy to keep shouting it from the rooftops. But it was a surrendering to that it helped change something in my life for the better. So how can we, during the Sun in Taurus, identify something that may have gone wrong, slow down, surrender to the process? Now remember, there's going to be a Mercury cazimi during this and a new moon. So we've got a Mercury cazimi and a new moon that will help us to make new starts in this area of our life. This decade is also about maybe preventing things in the future, like getting insurance policies, weeding the garden. A lot of the thoughts I was having today were in anticipation of pests that we saw on our plants last year. We just planted a number of serviceberry trees, which are amazing trees. They have these delicious little berries that are kind of a mixture of like blueberries, apples, and like another kind of like an almonds. Oh man, I can't wait. I can't wait. They're not fruiting yet, but I can't wait to have serviceberries in my yard. I was inspired by The Serviceberry by Robin Wall Kimmerer to plant them. They're very good for the environment in my area. But there were these little leaf hoppers, or these little tiny bugs, and they're sap-sucking insects, and they were really doing a number on the serviceberries. And it was a lot of effort to like try to control their damage. Now I have mixed feelings about it because they're part of the ecosystem as well. My fear was that they were going to kill the plant and not let it get established. I don't have a problem with insects when they come in and they're a healthy part of the ecosystem, but it took a lot of effort to get those plants, and I didn't want them to die in the first year that they were in. So this year I'm anticipating, I'm like, what can I do to mitigate the leaf hoppers? And so we've been doing research on like just like spraying some soap solution or like neem oil or something like that. But that's the type of thing like Taurus 3. If you know that there's a problem that could be coming in the future, prepare early in the season so that you don't have to deal with something that could be hazardous, right? So like preparing for that particular insect damage, checking on stuff. Like part of the problem that I had last year is that I got real busy and I wasn't checking the plants often enough, and those leaf hoppers proliferated and they got out of control. This year, I'm going to be paying close attention to those plants. And if I see any evidence of them, I'm going to take some of those control measures. So these are the types of things that by paying attention, you can mitigate a problem moving forward. At the end of this month of April, as I'm recording this, we still are going to have a Venus-Uranus conjunction. So there may be something in your life that's Venusian, where you get a shock of awareness, which is Uranus, and enlightenment, like I did with the enzyme that helped change my entire digestive experience. You might get something like that that's Venusian, that helps you solve a problem that's been vexing you for a long time. So keep that in mind. Okay, so let's move forward. The other thing about Taurus 3 that's important to note, there's a couple fixed stars in this decan that are kind of dangerous, I guess you could say. Capulus at 24 degrees is the sword of Perseus in the constellation related to that Greek hero. So the rashness of 8 comes, I think some is echoed through that sword of Capulus energy, like just slicing through something rashly, like with aggressive warrior energy. And then we've got Algol at about 25 to 26 degrees of Taurus, and we touched on that a little bit with the head of Medusa, right? So Algol is the blinking eye in the constellation related to Medusa, the eclipsed blinking red eye of Medusa. And anytime something's eclipsing or blinking in the sky, the ancients were like, that cannot be good. You know, like the source of light and life is blinking in and out of existence. We should be careful here. But the Algol has a lot of significations around severing your head, like losing your head emotionally and physically, and also through unrestrained feminine power, I guess, on some level, which can be protective if it is harnessed appropriately. It can protect people from abuse. Like I know there's a lot of people that work with SA survivors using Algol as a protective talismanic type of energy. But we also have to be careful of losing our own center and losing our own sense of balance with Algol. So it's something to consider with Taurus 3 too. Stella says, Dr. Earth has some more natural deterrents that are essential oil based that I use and is helpful. I'll have to check that out. Yeah. Yeah, any suggestions with that I'd be up for. Pretty sure it has neem in it as well. It's called something like Dr. Earth Final Stop. Okay, good. Now we've got it. Now I've got it on the screen. We can order some of that and protect our beautiful serviceberry trees. Stella says, Algol also has survivor rage and could be a retaliation from our lover Earth. Ooh, yes. Yeah. I think that's a really good point. I have some thoughts about this they're formulating. There's been a lot of talk in the zeitgeist, a lot of calling truth to power, to toxic masculinity, to we've seen a lot of things with the Epstein files of abuses of power, of sexual assault, of abuses of vulnerable people. And we've got some righteous anger towards those people, justified. And, you know, you could, if you take that, like Stella is talking about, and you think about the rape of this earth that has been happening for the last however many hundreds of years, the abuse that humans have wrought on this planet through their excess and through their greed, we're seeing the results of that, like coming through extreme weather patterns, coming through, in my own area, it gets warmer earlier, and that warm air hits the cold air and it creates storms. And the winds are really destructive. Like the trees in southeast Michigan have been just devastated over the last probably 5 to 10 years. There were so many trees in my neighborhood that have just like been just completely destroyed. A lot of it through wind, some of it through disease, more than normal. Trees that have stood for hundreds of years. We have literally 300-year-old oak trees in our neighborhood, some of which have fallen in the last few years. And that type of thing. The other thing, you know, survivor rage, Stella, that we're talking about here, the ability of a lover to be open to love and to give and to receive love. If you have an abused person, a traumatized person, they become closed off. They can't give and receive love in the same way before they were experiencing that abuse. And the earth can become similar. The more that we abuse it, the less fertile it can become, the less it will be able to share its gifts that it very much wants to give with us, right? It doesn't produce as much food. It doesn't produce livable conditions. The water becomes tainted. The fields become fallow, right? It's all related in there. That's the survivor rage, right, from Lover Earth. And I think it's a really good point to make is if we treat our lover with respect, we treat our partner Earth with the type of reverence that we should have in our own relationships, it will be a mutually beneficial relationship. It will take care of us and we will take care of them, right? So absolutely. All right, so that's Taurus 3. Let's start to see how that's going to unfold. So let's go back to the chart, and we'll take this off and we'll put the chart back on. So the 10th, right? We're going to the 10th. Oh, I wasn't even moving the chart over when I was talking about those other ones, was I? The last quarter moon. Oh, well. May 10th, now you can see the sun is at 20 degrees of Taurus. Mercury is about to cazimi. Venus has been moving through Gemini, right? Still under the malefic enclosure during most of Taurus season here. So a lot of the challenge for creating abundance that Taurus wants to do might have difficulty because the supply lines aren't working the way that they should, right? That's really the crux of it. You can see this in the astrology. Venus and Gemini trying to communicate effectively, trying to move things from one space to another, which is a mercurial signification related to Gemini, trying to understand each other. All of that is really challenged this Taurus season because of the malefic enclosure of Venus and the aversion of Venus, honestly. Venus not being able to witness the Taurus sun and Mercury. All right, so on the 10th through the 13th, we have both the sun and Mercury sextiling Jupiter. Okay, so on we see the beginning of this on the 10th with the sun and Jupiter sextile. And then on the 13th, the 12th and the 13th, Mercury is going to sextile because they're traveling together. So those couple of days, they may actually give us some insights into the types of things that we need to do to fix what we need to fix. All right, and that's leading really to the Mercury cazimi on the 14th. So the days leading up to it, we might be able to receive the information that we need to start making the new start, to understand what information and resources and questions that we need to do to actually fix something. I'm nervous. I'm nervous this month. There's two things that are happening in my yard that I'm nervous about. First of all, I've been wanting to take out some of the asphalt and restore the drainage and the land so I can build garden beds. I'm a little bit nervous about that because it could be a big project that could have a lot of challenges around it. There's also another building that's going to be doing construction right behind our house. It's like a building that's going to be turned into like a wood shop and a woodworking shop. And they have drainage that is a problem, and they're going to try to fix it, which is very Taurus 3. So they're going to be digging like drainage ditches and things. And it's probably for the best, but it's going to be disrupting my peace. And I'm just thinking, like, me personally, I have the 3rd house, Libra, ruled by Venus, and the 10th house. So the noise could potentially, from my neighborhood, could affect my ability to do my work, like, if that makes sense. So I'm nervous about that, but neither here nor there. That's an example, though, from life that where you use astrology to anticipate the type of issue that might be able to come and then figure out some solutions to it, right? So that Mercury cazimi, seeds being planted for solutions and ideas and discussing how to repair something that has fallen into disrepair. Now that's bringing us to the new moon in Taurus, right? So this is the new moon in Taurus 3. Here's it at 25 degrees of Taurus. Mercury is co-present, excuse me. We've got Javier joining us. What's up, Javier? Hope everyone's well today. Sorry I'm late. No worries. Thank you just for joining us, Javier. Appreciate you. Hope everything's going well your way in Canada. We've got another Canadian joining us today. Love my Canadian friends. And hope everything's going well with you north of the border. One interesting thing that I didn't mention at the beginning of this that I think is really powerful for the Mercury cazimi and this new moon is we have something called a mutual reception with Venus and Mercury. So mutual reception is when a planet is inhabiting someone else's domicile or temple. In this case, Venus is in Mercury's temple of Gemini, and Mercury is in Venus's temple of Taurus. So despite all the challenges that both Mercury and Venus are going through this month, with the malefic enclosure of Venus, with Mercury going under the beams and being burned up by the beams of the sun, getting ready for that Cazimi potentially, there is a secret line of communication between them. They have an interest in each other's well-being. And sometimes when you have two planets that are going through a difficult time and they're in mutual reception with one another, it's sort of like two drunks stumbling home and they're leaning on each other to get home. So there may be some things today or in May where you've had some difficult experiences, but there's some secret connection that's helping get to the finish line. And I think that that's really a beautiful manifestation, right? So let's talk about this full moon, or new moon, excuse me. So we've got 25 degrees right smack on top of Algol, okay? Again, we could be feeling our anger. We could be feeling our righteous survivor's rage towards any number of polycrises that have been wrought upon us by whoever in our personal lives and in the collective, by people in power, by people not in power, by the billionaire Epstein class, by just the people that are allowing that to happen. Like there's all sorts of things we could be angry about. And I'm not going to be one to tell you to just like chill out. I just, we're past that, right? I will say this. When we feel that depth of rage, I do think that let's call it martial rage on some level. Let's think about it sort of on a Mars level. We have to be able to, the Orphic hymn associated with Mars talks about turning the weapons of war into plowshares, which is, I believe, like a biblical reference, but mostly a Greek reference, I guess, if it's older. I digress. I feel like I'm committing a Hegseth Tarantino biblical reference. What a fucking ridiculous cluster cuss that was. If you aren't familiar, Pete Hegseth, the Department of War leader, quoted a quote-unquote biblical verse from Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction instead of a real biblical verse, and claimed that it was from the Bible because he's a fucking idiot. And it's just, it would be funny if it wasn't so like tragic and sad. But anyway, some of that is the righteous Algol anger coming out because we have morons running our country right now that are putting everyone in danger. Now, what do we do with that energy? Today, we're talking about it. We're talking about the things that we love. We're talking about the things that are problems, but we're also talking about things that we can do with that energy. If we just let our rage and our anger go unchecked, it might not have the effect, the cathartic effect of actually changing our circumstances. I think that's important to recognize. I think the anger that comes up in our life when something goes wrong, or if we're a victim of abuse or of life, that anger that comes up is useful. It helps us to get over inertia, okay? Sometimes when we feel stuck in a situation, like a lot of people in Western civilization have been feel stuck in this myth of propaganda of this capitalist bullshit, that where we are taught that our value is based on how much stuff we can accumulate in our life. It's bullshit. It's just a lie. It's only designed to make a small handful of people wealthy. When we start to understand and wake up from that, we get angry, right? Because we've suffered abuse from people that only have their own best interest and their greed and Wendigo mindset in mind. Now, to be able to change our circumstances, that indignation has to have organization. when you see political movements, when you see revolutionary movements over time, the ones that are just chaotic aren't necessarily as effective. Doesn't mean we don't have people that need to like start these things. But when movements are organized, when labor movements are organized, when strikes are organized, when things like that are organized, when people start utilizing the power of community to push back on abuses, when people start calling their senators, calling people and saying, you shouldn't vote for this, this is destructive. That is a way to take that anger of this new moon in Algol and to utilize it to start healing something, to start protecting something that's important to you, right? And if you're just burning yourself out by lashing out in a wild rage, you might not be as effective in bringing about change, real change. So do not mistake me for not being angry at the state of things right now. I'm really pissed off about how things are right now. But I know from personal experience that when I let my anger consume me and become unchecked and undirected, it can be adding to the destruction rather than adding to the healing. And that's my main plea at this full moon for all of you, is to take that righteous rage and do something productive with it. Do something healing with it. Do something that actually changes the systems that we live in, rather than just creates more suffering for people on the planet. And I think in that regard, it can be one of the most powerful new moons of the entire year. It's sextiling Jupiter, so it has some benefic support. There's still a whole sign square with Pluto, but it is pretty widely separating. We've still got a powerful malefic planets with Mars in Aries and a fallen Saturn, right? Yeah, so I think this is a great time to take that anger, take that rage, fix something with it, heal something with it, direct it in something tangible and practical rather than, I don't know, just, it's the difference between gathering community to make a change in a protest versus spouting off some performative like social media post that is only complaining without offering the next step in the solution. I think it's important to call out things as we see it, but how do we take the next step with it rather than just adding to the noise? How do we take the next step to solving the problem? Okay. On the 17th, we have Mercury moving into Gemini. And as it moves into Gemini, it almost immediately conjoins Uranus, okay? So we have Mercury moving into Gemini, all right? We have, this is where all the planets start shifting. After this new moon, the planets start changing positions. We got Mercury moving into Gemini. We have Mars the next day moving into Taurus, and Venus the next day moving into Cancer. So Mercury into Gemini, our thoughts, our ideas are less towards fixing an old problem and moving more towards exploring new possibilities. So after we solve and repair the old damage, potentially, now we get to move into exploration of something new. And it might be shocking what kind of explorations we're moving towards, what types of new things we're incorporating because of the contact with Uranus, right? So I guess there might be some flashes of brilliance that come through this. There also could be some flashes of hubris too. I think that it would be very easy to overdo your exploration with the Mercury-Uranus conjunction, where you could get yourself in trouble with too many options, right? If we start talking a little bit about Gemini 1, right? If you see Gemini 1 here, 8 of Swords, you see someone that is bound and blindfolded and surrounded by swords. This is a Jupiter-ruled decan, okay, in the sign of Mercury. Mercury likes to split things into digestible pieces. It says, let's take something big and make it small. Jupiter says, let's take something small and make it big. Like, right? Jupiter says, hey, let's take all of these little factoids and explorations, and let's give you not 10 of them to synthesize, but 10,000. And when that inevitably happens, it can be paralyzing. It can be paralysis by analysis. You got so many projects where you just cannot possibly give enough attention to all of them. So my cautionary tale for you with this is turn down the noise when Mercury and Uranus come together. Don't get distracted by too many options. One of the solutions to the Eight of Swords here is quieting the mind, right? Meditation, getting away from your phone every once in a while, getting away from the internet. Silence is good self-care for this kind of thing. Being able to hear what your priorities are rather than to hear the thousands of barking dogs, whether it's your own or the collectives. But I do think that it does bring us some flexibility, I guess you could say. A lot of times when planets are moving through Taurus, we think that there's only one solution. When planets start moving in Gemini, we start to see that we have options, that we don't necessarily have to do it the way that we've always done it. I'm doing that here today. As a Taurus moon that is smack on my midheaven of my career, my visibility, there's a part of me that's like, I have to do this the same way each time. And I have to do it the same day, the same time. And sometimes that's good. Today, this week, circumstances that were out of my control, that were bigger than me, the weather, made me have to think and be flexible. If I had tried to do a live stream last Friday, I would have been grossly underprepared. I would have been sleep deprived. I wouldn't have had the notes that I have today, which is like 5 pages of detailed notes that look like this. Okay, I do this every single month. I make 5 pages of notes like this by hand. Okay, it just helps me to internalize the astrological aspects and to see things that I might miss if I was just looking at the chart or something like that. I highly recommend writing things out by hand if you can. It really stimulates parts of your brain that it wouldn't normally, just by typing. So seeing more options with Mercury, Uranus in Gemini, Venus in Gemini. So now we're starting to get a stellium stack up in Gemini. And it's making a sextile to the remaining Aries placements. So this is sort of like adding fuel to the fire, adding ideas, new ideas that could help us take actions that could be successful. Now, the challenge of this is the next day, right? The next day, we have Mars moving into Taurus and Venus moving into Cancer. So they all click over here on the 18th. And so here, we'll just move it forward a day here because it's the end of the day. So this is the 19th you see on the screen, but technically these planets click over at the end of the day on the 18th. So and on some level, you'd be like, well, maybe now Venus is in a new sign. It's not a malefic enclosure anymore. Well, not so fast. Because now look, we have Venus in Cancer at 0 degrees Cancer. Now Taurus has moved and is now casting its ray from 0 degrees of Taurus on one side of Venus, while Saturn continues to cast its ray to a different portion of the side of Venus, I guess you could say. It was casting a sextile ray to Gemini. Now it's casting a square ray to Cancer. It's kind of like out of the frying pan into the fire type of experience. The challenges that we were talking about with Venus before were ones related to breakdowns in communication, not being able to get a supply from one point to the other, selfish actions, making it difficult to communicate. Now with these changes, Mars moving into Taurus means that we are severed from the resources that we need to take action that we want to take. Venus moving into Cancer says we are trying to harmonize relationships. Venus in Cancer 1 has a secret superpower for creating mutually beneficial relationships. But now we're being assaulted by Mars, I guess you could say, even though it's a sextile. We're being challenged by a fear of scarcity in our relationships. We're also being challenged by Saturn on the other side. Saturn's now moving through the second decan of Aries, which is saying, hey, you have to commit to your own particular value system. Like that decan of Aries says, what is your royal decree? What are the values that you have in your life? And now you need to craft a life around it. You need to structure a Saturn theme, your life around your personal values. And you don't have any choice. You are bound to it. Saturn has a binding energy. Like the sun in this decan is like, that's joyful. That's like, oh yeah, that brings me life to say, here I am. This is who I am. Saturn in this decan says, you don't have a choice. You've got to do this. If you want to grow up or be mature, you have to commit to your values. You have to balance out your needs versus other needs and things of that nature. You got to check your overly aggressive royal decrees, I guess, is another thing, another way to look at it too. As we move from first decan Aries Saturn to second decan Aries Saturn, we're moving away from checking the dominating principle, the like colonizing force that Saturn is trying to reckon with, to one of like people saying, this is what I believe. Here are my rules, and you better live by my rules, or there'll be hell to pay. I think that there will be royal decrees made, but those decrees will be so fucked up that people will be like, hell no, we're not following your royal decree, right? That doesn't serve anybody but you. And that is going to be putting, that kind of energy is going to be putting pressure on Venus. Fear of scarcity, making it difficult to harmonize relationships, and draconic royal decrees out in the collective, making it difficult to feel safe and comfortable. So it shifts the energy of the malefic enclosure of Venus to a different set of circumstances. Really fascinating to see how that works. It's kind of weird. It doesn't happen like that very often with multiple planets shifting at the same time and then continuing on a malefic enclosure type of experience. All right, so we move to the 19th, which we have on the screen here, I guess, so we'll just stay here. Venus sextiles Mars at this day. So that is the continuation of the malefic enclosure, right? Once the sextile, we might get a break for like a few hours from Venus malefic enclosure, but once the sextile happens, it's right back into it, okay? The 19th also, we have Mercury at the bending of the nodes. I've learned to pay very special attention to planets at the bending of the nodes. As a traditional astrologer, this is one that is very instructive generally. So we have Mercury at the bending of the nodes and then making a trine to Pluto from 5 degrees Gemini to 5 degrees of Aquarius, okay? When we have a planet at the bending of the nodes of the moon are they're points where the path of any planet, or in this case, the moon, crosses over, I believe, the ecliptic. So it's sort of like the planet is rising or falling. And those nodes in Hellenistic astrology speak towards points of increase and decrease. All right, you've got the north node in Pisces right now. You can also consider that a dragon's head that's been severed, that is hungry and wants to consume something. Right now, what people are hungering for, oh my God, I've got a story to tell about this. People are hungering for a little bit of an escape from reality. I think that reality has become really tough right now, and there is an increased desire to just leave it all behind and go into your imagination. One thing that I've been experiencing the past week or so, sometimes I will play, I am not immune to a video game on my phone. And what inevitably happens with a video game on my phone is I'll get one game that I'll get really into, and it will be a little bit too distracting, and I'm like, I gotta put this down. I can't do this anymore. The one game that I've been into last week that it's been around for a while, but I just kind of got hip to it. It's called Sky, Children of the Light. It's like the most Venus in Pisces. It's the most North Node in Pisces 1 game ever. Okay, it's literally like you're this little soul that descends down to the earth, And you need to restore the light of the earth that has fallen into darkness. It's the most 12th house, like ethereal game ever. And you can fly. You like that. A lot of the mechanics are flying through the clouds, and it's like a dream. Like you're flying through the clouds. The cool thing about it is it's cooperative. Like you can hold hands and make friends with people, and they'll lead you around, and you have to restore light to spirits and things like that. Long story short, it is a manifestation of the desire to escape our physical reality and be in some different space. And when we have Mercury hitting the bending of the nodes, that is the peak of the increase. If I'm just thinking about this kind of like out loud, just thinking about how this might affect myself, I have a feeling that by May 19th, I'll probably be like, you know what? I probably need to get back to doing some more reading and some more work and more gardening. I probably need to put this game down in the wee hours of the night. Instead of picking this game up from 7 to 9, I need to pick a book up. That's what I think is probably going to happen, because it's the peak of increase. It's the peak of escapism. And that might be true in your life too. There might be something that you're using to deal with the painful physical reality that we're living in right now, friends. With the polycrises, the just the madness. And I don't think you should judge yourself too hard for some of that. I think that a little bit of like, a little bit of escapism is okay. As long as when you come back, this is my advice for anything that you utilize for escapism. It only becomes toxic, in my opinion, if when you come back from the fantasy world, from whatever it is, whether some people use substances to get to this place, some people use video games, some people use whatever. If when you come back, your physical reality has started to completely deteriorate, then you've spent too much time in the alternate reality. And that's when the balance comes in. For me, I've always been acutely aware that anytime I'm doing anything for escapism, my physical reality, like when we're in this is like Ready Player One, right? When you're lost in the second world and you come back to the real world, and you see, oh my God, I live in a trash heap, and like I haven't showered, or like I the food is rotting in the fridge, and the earth is dying, and all these things. That's when you have to say, I have to balance my time between these things. And I think with Mercury at the north bending of the nodes, this is a moment for a lot of us where we feel like, you know what, we've gotten a little rest in the oasis. Now we need to, literally it was named the Oasis in that movie, right? And now we need to come back to earth a little bit. We need to get grounded. We need to get a little bit practical. We need to start figuring out what the practical solutions are, instead of saying, this is too much, I can't handle it, I need a break, right? Again, I am not ragging on anybody that needs a little escape from reality every once in a while. I think that some of that actually can activate your imagination in positive ways. You can make friendships like that too. Like this is one thing, this little game is really beautiful. Like when you advance in the game and you advance with friendships with people, first of all, you can there's people from all over the world, and there's something appealing about connecting with people in this beautiful scape. And the goal of it is to restore light to darkness. And you gain skills in the game by being able to give other players high fives, give other players hugs. I mean, it's very Cancerian. The game was released on a Cancer launch date, and it's very it's a nurturing game. I kind of love it, but I also realize the danger of it being a second world that is easy to get lost into. So how do we practice moderation around this period of time with wanting to escape versus dealing with the physical reality that we live in that is asking us to engage and be a part of it? Okay, so on the 20th, the sun moves into Gemini here. So you could see here after the 19th and into the 20th and 21st, now we've got our sun in Gemini. We kind of touched on some of the solar Gemini themes here. Let's just go back to it real quick. Again, Jupiter ruled Decan in the Mercury ruled sign of Gemini. The cool thing about the sun moving into Gemini is that it's going to be there with its host. Mercury is in Gemini. That makes a really powerful time for Mercury Sun. The challenge of it is because Mercury is in Gemini, the downsides of the Gemini energy are also very extreme. The noise, the splitting of attention in multiple directions, that sometimes the inability to focus, the trying to pollinate too many flowers at one time, the trying to take on too much and too many projects, that can also be challenging around this period of time. So I guess I would advise you to pace yourself and to choose wisely to the things that you commit to, so that you're not getting overwhelmed. The paralysis by analysis thing is real. The daimon in this decan is Tethys, the goddess of rivers, where we're splitting the ocean. The ancient Greeks believed there was like a god, Okeanos, that was like an ocean that surrounded the earth. Excuse me. And Tethys was like the splitting of that ocean into little tributaries, which is really interesting because it sort of works with the splitting of attention in Gemini into multiple tributaries of thought and attention. Now, this is going to happen from May the 20th to May the 31st. Mercury moves out of bounds on the 22nd. So this is Mercury out of bounds from 11 degrees of Gemini, okay, to, what is it, the other, do I have it on here? I'm looking at my notes. One moment. 11 degrees of Gemini to 17 degrees of Cancer. Okay. So throughout the rest of Gemini into half of the Cancerian Mercury period. Now, Mercury out of bounds, thoughts, communications, ideas that are not necessarily in the socially acceptable way that we've done things, or the I don't know, following the herd. It's kind of outside of the box type of thinking. This will be really fascinating to witness on this channel, because I have Venus at 16 degrees of Gemini and my sun is at 15 degrees of Cancer. So Mercury is going to be grinding over those planets. Maybe you'll hear me communicating in ways that you might not expect. I don't know. I've been really vocal about things lately that I don't agree with, and we'll see where that goes. I try to balance it out with speaking about the things I love too. So hopefully it's not getting too exhausting hearing me talk about the challenges on the face of the earth. But man, we're in a really difficult straits right now, and we really need to start taking action to restore harmony and balance. So Mercury out of bounds, 22nd through the 14th, which just happens to be the birthday of the United States president. So keep an eye on him for, his communication. I wonder if he already has Mercury out of bounds in his natal chart, because it seems like everything he says is out of the norm, but could be even more quote unquote interesting. When we get to, well, the same day, let's before we move forward, we've got another thing to look at here. While Mercury moves out of bounds, this is interesting because we see the last time we had an out of bounds planet, which was Venus out of bounds. Let me go back and look at where that was. The day that Venus went out of bounds, we had Uranus going under the beams of the sun and Mercury squaring Pluto. So these were the relationships of that. Now, when Uranus is Cazimi, we have Mercury going out of bounds and Venus squaring Neptune. Okay, so really, really something interesting is going to be happening on this 22nd. But something that could potentially be very distracting. Venus making the square to Neptune, something where we're attempting to bring harmony to family or to children or something like that. We're trying to restore some balance to the nurturing instincts, but it's coming into the square with the individual desire or the individual overly yang energy. And Mercury is going to go out of bounds, so we might be really communicating in ways that we wouldn't, and especially with the sun coming together with Uranus. So the sun coming together with Uranus, the Uranus Cazimi, planting a seed for that Uranian cycle. So I think this is another hot spot in the month of May, with the 22nd, with Mercury going out of bounds and the Uranus Cazimi. That is bringing us to the first quarter moon on the 23rd. So here's the first quarter moon, which is a square between the moon in Virgo. Okay, let's switch it around here. And the sun in Gemini. So here's the sun at 2 degrees Gemini and the moon at 2 degrees Virgo. This is the first quarter moon where we are seeing the light of the moon increase. The last quarter moon, the light is waning. The way that I use this practically in my practice and just the way that I think about things, when the moon is waning, we're releasing the qualities that the moon is going through. We are letting go of excess in that decan, sign, whatever. When the moon is waxing, we want to increase those qualities to be able to achieve the goal of the sun. So the goal of the sun is to gather information in Gemini 1, okay? Split our attention in multiple different ways, to make things digestible by splitting it into a lot of different pieces. The goal of Virgo 1 is to make something with it, okay? To learn new skills so that you can make something with the information that you have. It's also weeding out the inefficiencies, weeding out the information that isn't relevant or valid. So I find it really fascinating that when we're coming off of Mercury just going out of bounds, a cazimi with the sun in Gemini, that now we have a square with the sun in Gemini and the moon in Virgo, where we're going to have to say, we've got a million things coming at us, right? Information-wise. We've got Venus squared Neptune. What is real? What isn't? How do we ground ourselves practically in the real world again and let go of some of the information that just is noise? And then also, how do we learn the skills that we need to be able to gather the information that we need to move forward? Okay, so how do we utilize our breathing in and breathing out? I do this all the time in my chart. I have Jupiter squared Venus in Gemini, right? Jupiter in Virgo. I breathe in Venus. I breathe out Jupiter. I take in information. I try to contextualize it to make it practical and useful. That's what I do every single week on the channel. There are more notes than I can possibly talk about on this page. This is the Gemini part. This is exploring every possible angle, okay? And then when I get on the broadcast, what I talk about in the stories and practicalness is trying to bring it down to earth. This is what we need to do in this first quarter moon. Explore and then see what you can do with it. That brings us to the sun at the north bending of the nodes on the 25th. So here is the 25th, where we have the sun at about 4 degrees of Gemini. And this is a very similar condition that Mercury had just gone through a couple days earlier. So when you have a planet at the bending of the nodes, there are a couple things to think about. You definitely want to think about which direction the planet is going to. Is it going towards the north node or towards the south node? Because when it's at the bending of the nodes and it's heading towards the south node, that is the peak of increase and it's starting to head towards decrease. Both of these planets, Mercury and the sun, are going to be at the peak of information that is an attempt to escape reality. It's going to start moving towards what is real. Maybe we need to turn down the noise and start moving towards releasing and maybe even releasing old forms. That's what the South Node in Virgo does. It says, hey, you're going to have to release the way that you do something. And with the sun moving here, the other way I like to use these planets at the bending of the nodes is you need to connect it with what houses that planet rules. So when Mercury is at the bending of the nodes, the Gemini and the Virgo parts of your chart are moving from increase to decrease. And this is good to know because, like, for example, in my own chart, Mercury rules the 2nd house and the 11th house. That might be a point where I may have to tighten the financial belt or something like that, right? Because as a 2nd house ruler, if it's moving towards decrease, it might be moving towards having to be more frugal with something. Or that's just an example. Like if it's the ruler of your 10th house, for example, you may have to work a little bit less. If it's moving towards the 10th house south node, you may have to release your attachment to overdoing it at work. Same thing with like if it's in the 4th house. You have to release your attachment to spending too much time at home and maybe get out into the world a little bit. These are kind of different ways you can manifest that. When the sun is at the bending, you want to look at the Leo part of your chart and say, what is heading towards decrease? Where am I at a peak? I think that the bending of the nodes they're like full moons on some level. At least this one is. This is a full moon of increase. And this is a full moon of solar consciousness related to escapism and starting to move towards reality checks. Okay. And it could have an impact on the Leo area of your chart. Okay. Sun at the bending of the nodes, 25th. On the 26th, we have a bunch of Pluto aspects. The 26th, so we really should understand too that we have the sun at the bending of the nodes at the same time as Mars is building towards the Pluto square and the trine, the sun with the trine with Pluto, sun with the trine to Pluto. So here's a trine to Pluto, here's a square to Pluto. Okay, so here's the square, and then I like these little shapes. Maybe I just have to draw this. Here's the trine. There you go. Art. So two things happening simultaneously. The first, the elephant in the room, is the Mars-Pluto square. You have Mars now in its exile, in a place that it is not comfortable. Mars's home signs are Aries and Scorpio. So now we're in the opposite sign of Taurus to Scorpio. Mars likes to sever and separate. Mars likes to take action. Mars wants to do it now, ask questions later. Taurus likes to slow down. Taurus is all about the things that bring us comfort. It's about trying to build stability. It's about trying to build resources. Mars severs those resources. It separates us from those things. It also makes Mars get stuck in the mud, right? There's two ways that Mars in Taurus can manifest. And those of you who have Mars in Taurus natally, you can confirm or deny this. Mars in Taurus, my dad has this, so I've witnessed both of these things. It's like the bull that has trouble getting moving, right? It's like you're sitting on the couch and it's like, I can't get myself started. I would be able to do this, but I'd rather just sit and watch TV or play this game on my phone or eat some potato chips or just do something that gratifies my senses. And doing work doesn't sound fun. The flip side of that is that when you do get started, you're like a freight train. You're like, oh my God, I love this. I have to keep doing it. I'm just going to do it. I have to do it. I don't know when to stop. Like I said, I've witnessed my father do both of these things. So the key with Mars and Taurus is, how do you find that balance between work and play? How do you know when to stop, but know how to get started? It's overcoming the challenge of inertia. Now, with Mars specifically in Taurus 1, there may be a lot of things in the collective around fear of scarcity, like fear and worry. Remember, that's the Lord of worry over not having enough, because there is going to be a revelation potentially of corruption in the collective, in the Aquarius kind of area that's being revealed to us. Sometimes it's through technology with Pluto and Aquarius. Could be that I don't know, without going down the AI rabbit hole, like a lot of the AI CEOs, billionaires, have been getting a lot of justifiable pushback because of their desire to turn AI both into a surveillance state technology, which we saw with Palantir's fascist manifesto that just came out this week, and with their desire to make intelligence a payable utility to the companies and consolidating the wealth of the entire internet into the hands of the few. So those types of issues could come out too, and especially towards resources though. With the trine, with the sun to Pluto, I mean, think about the sun showing us our options. Now, because of the square to Pluto with this Mars to Pluto, because we are being forced into becoming innovative because maybe a lack of resources. We may have to be flexible about what our expectations were. A lot of the suffering in the world comes not necessarily from what we experience, although we can experience suffering, but a great deal of the suffering in our worlds come through the actions and the events that we experience not meeting with what we expected to happen. The gap between what we are actually going through and what we hoped for. And when we become a little bit more flexible with that, when we start seeing that there are other possibilities rather than the only choice that will work for us, then we start alleviating some of that. We start working with Pluto and transform some of this energy, transmute it, to take what is revealed and turn it into something that can maybe be healing and maybe it can be transformational. All right, so that is the 26th. As those two events happen, then we have another cool moment of phasis, which is called the emerging of Mercury as the evening star. So this is going to happen on the 27th, later in the day. We'll go forward a few hours because it's really at 21 degrees. There it is. Okay, right around, I don't know, somewhere around here. Okay. 15 degrees arc of separation between Mercury and the sun. Coincidentally, this is right on Trump's natal sun. So some message from him is coming in these days. I mean, when is there not a message from him coming? But a consequential message from the President of the United States is going to be revealed around this, or something that is revealed that's been happening behind the scenes, potentially, that will have a large, he will be the main character in that drama. And of course, he asserts himself as the main character in that drama, so it's not surprising. In our own lives, remember we talked about, I don't know if we talked about, maybe I was talking about this with my partner instead, but Gemini 3 is really an energy around creating a black and white situation from shades of gray. It is a solar decan in a Mercury ruled sign. And what the action of Mercury or in Gemini 3 is, there are often ultimatums that have come. I think we talked about this with the reversals, right, that often happen with the president. Because this is the last decan before the summer solstice, this could be the revelation of either an ultimatum or the revelation of a reversal of those ultimatums as well. The other thing that happens in Gemini 3 is there's a choice that has to be made. In Gemini, there's a set of twins, Castor and Pollux, one mortal, one immortal. One dies in a fight with another set of twins. The immortal twin petitions Zeus to let them share some time on Olympus, but they can never really be together. They split time on Olympus and in Hades. And there's sort of this kind of like energy of, you can't keep all the plates spinning. You can't keep everything alive. Some projects have to die. That's why Austin Cobbett calls that decan the executioner's sword. You have to make choices. You've explored and now you have to commit, right? So there might be something that you are committing to by letting go of something else when Mercury emerges as the evening star on the 27th, okay? A couple more things, two more things, and then we'll wrap for the day. Venus squares Saturn on the 28th. So think about how these two events are connected. Now we have the Venus-Saturn square. Coincidentally, this ends the malefic enclosure of Venus, because now the ray of Saturn is on this side, while the ray of Mars is on this side, and Venus is past it. So with the revelation of what needs to stay and what needs to go, of the choices that we're pretty much forced to make with the revelation of Mercury emerging from the beams, that liberates us from feeling stuck. Okay, so Venus squared Saturn. Saturn's in the overcoming position, which means that the need to take action in the direction of something new, of something that we need to individuate, a place where we need to really take the leap into not being dependent on something else, that's going to be more powerful than our desire to create harmony within the group. Okay. That's going to be the tension that we feel with the Saturn and Venus square. But the good news is that Venus is released from malefic enclosure. Yes, we're going to feel the pressure from Saturn, but we'll start to feel a little bit less the pressure from Mars. It may be I could see how this could play out where we're forced to take a leap into some new individual endeavor. We're forced to take our own needs into account. And that starts to help alleviate the fear of scarcity that Mars in Taurus 1 could bring, right? So like maybe we say, oh, we got to make some money and we need to stop hemming and hawing about, its effect on everyone else. We've just got to go out and do this. We got to go plant the garden, or we got to go start the Kickstarter or the Patreon or whatever it is. Those are the types of actions that could release you from a malefic enclosure, that could alleviate some of the fears of scarcity, but also are done in support of self-interest and not necessarily always at the behest of the group. Okay. The last thing for the month is we have our second full moon. So this is the blue moon, I guess you could say. It doesn't really have any astrological, from what I understand. Maybe someone else has some thoughts about that, but I think that's just like a cultural thing. Second full moon in the month, 9 degrees of Sagittarius, opposite the 9-degree Gemini sun. Mercury is co-present with the sun. The moon is hosted by Jupiter, and Jupiter is in its exaltation in Cancer, but in Cancer 3. So really this one is, we've got Mercury asking us to make choices and to eliminate options. We have Jupiter in Cancer 3 saying, take actions to alleviate excess. What do you do if you have more than you need? Maybe it's more ideas than you need. How do you let go of some of those beliefs? Maybe you have more projects than you need. Maybe you have more resources than you need. How can you share that with your neighbor? That decan's called the overflowing cup in 36 Faces. How do you take actions that are philanthropic? What do you do to increase that which you need if you're lacking in something? Those are questions that Jupiter might be asking at this full moon. I would also say too that the first decan of Sagittarius is about communicating an enthusiasm with a Mercury-ruled decan in a Jupiter-ruled sign, but also just motion, taking action instead of overthinking it. So there might be some really important actions that you're taking at this full moon that could be in service of alleviating excess, and also could be about sharing your enthusiasms about what you've been working on. We'll do a live stream on it, so I'll have you covered with that in the weeks ahead. All right, that's what we got. In June, coming up in June, just a preview, new moon in Gemini, full moon in Capricorn, Mercury and the sun move into Cancer, Mercury retrogrades in Cancer 3. So all of those questions of excess could be coming back around with Mercury retrograding in that decan. Venus and Jupiter will move into Leo. So that's kind of a big deal, especially for Jupiter moving into Leo out of its exaltation and then making an opposition to Pluto in June. Mars moves out of its exile in Taurus and into Gemini. And then we do have a really nice aspect that I put on here, which is Venus conjoining Jupiter in Cancer. That should be a really nice moment in June amidst some other maybe potentially challenging astrology. All right. I've got a hexagram for you and an I-Ching. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Do me a huge favor. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. It would be awesome to have you on my email list as well. And go check out my sale, spring sale, 20% off all readings and recordings until the 1st of May. Now let's talk about the I-Ching for this month. So the I-Ching we have is the Army. This is hexagram number 7, changing to hexagram 27, nourishment. Very Taurus-y, right? Very Taurus-y. Okay. Okay. So let's break down hexagram number 7 through our good friend, Jack Balkin. I love this book, The Laws of Change. It's my favorite I-Ching book. The Army also translates to military virtues, discipline, self-discipline, honor, loyalty, integrity, massing of force, the multitude. The Judgment says, the army needs perseverance and a strong leader, good fortune, and no blame. He says, a mass of people is not an army, but it can become one if it is trained, organized, and led by a great general. Remember we talked about organizing our righteous indignation into action that is sustainable? Discipline is crucial. It converts a disorganized mob into an effective fighting force. But discipline is not achieved through threats or violence. Rather, it requires leadership. Good generals know how to inspire their troops and create a sense of esprit de corps. I don't know if I pronounced that right. I probably butchered it. They know how and when to exercise authority and punish disobedience, to encourage resourcefulness and reward ambition. They train their troops so thoroughly that discipline and obedience become second nature, and then organize and arrange them so that their force and effect is amplified and maximized. Great generals always show care and concern for the welfare of their soldiers. This is another fucking thing. There were news stories that the American soldiers that were stationed in Iran were eating like bullshit rations of like gray meat and like 3 carrots on like a tray. They were massively undernourished and having to eat crazy food because the trade routes and the ability to get supplies to them had been choked off. So just a complete mismanagement. That's sorry for the rant on that, but that just really sparked a visceral image because we're getting examples of what great generals do, and in this hexagram. But we also have examples of what terrible generals do for their troops when we have these experiences right now in America and Iran. So great generals always show care and concern for the welfare of their soldiers. They understand the destructiveness of war and therefore risk the lives of their soldiers only when it is necessary to do so. It doesn't sound like what's happening right now. They are bold when the situation requires it, but hold back when it is prudent. They use force sparingly and with precision. And because they are loyal and honorable to those who serve beneath them, their troops are willing to follow them into battle. Just as troops are loyal to good generals are loyal and trustworthy to their king and country. Hence, rulers have complete confidence in their military leaders and give them the responsibility to conduct the war to its conclusion. The same considerations, now these are all metaphors. The metaphors that really have quite some literal examples, and maybe even the opposite examples in our society right now. The same considerations apply to all effective leadership. Any organization needs a strong leader who knows how to gain the trust of others and inspire them with a sense of vision and common purpose. You must be able to convey your sense of enthusiasm and commitment to others. You must recognize the importance of planning, organization, and discipline. Exert your authority fairly and consistently, and you will win the respect and obedience of others. Act loyally and honorably to others if you want them to act loyally and honorably to you. The army is also a metaphor for how to conduct your life. You are both the potential army and the general who must train it and transform it from a disorganized mass of peasantry into a disciplined and motivated force. Sorry, that statement is a little funny to me. Just is kind of ridiculous, but like the general, you are entrusted with a great possibility. But like the undifferentiated mass, your ambitions will amount to nothing if you do not establish priorities and organize them and structure your life. One thing, just a commentary on that. The I-Ching is a lot of the language from the I-Ching comes from ancient China, where they were organized through like an emperor-citizen organization. So there is still some of that language of hierarchy within the I-Ching that makes me chuckle every once in a while. The chuckling is like, oh, I don't know if I agree with that. But we have to take the context of the time period that a lot of it was written in, and then start to maybe kind of see how we can apply that to our modern day sensibilities. I think that's another exercise of interpretation. So we have one changing line here, okay? Well, let's first say the image. The image, it says, in the middle of the earth is water. This is the image of the army. Thus, the superior person marshals his forces through generosity to the common people. Okay, generosity. The changing lines, we have 3 changing lines. The first changing line is at the level of intuition and instinct. It says the army must go forth disciplined by regulations. If the discipline is not good, misfortune. Jack Balkin says this line compares the beginning of any enterprise to that of a military mission. The cause must be worthy and just, or one will not be able to sustain it. Let me repeat that. The cause must be worthy and just, or one will not be able to sustain it. That sounds like something to meditate on in light of what's going on in our world right now. The plan of action must be clear, or the soldiers will not know what to do in a time of crisis. The troops must be disciplined and organized, otherwise they will be routed in battle. In the same way, make sure that what you are planning to do is worthwhile. Articulate your objectives and organize your resources before you act. If you rush forward unprepared or without clear goals, the result will be chaos and defeat. Exercise self-discipline if you want to succeed. This is true in our individual projects as well as in the machinations of power. So be organized when you go into your projects. Don't just act chaotically, or you could experience defeat and failure. Second line, okay? In the middle of the army, good fortune, no blame. 3 times the king bestows a decoration. This line compares your situation to that of a general amongst his troops. A good general remains with his troops, eats with them, and sleeps with them. This allows him to stay in touch with his forces, and because he shares with both the good and bad with those who serve under him, he respects him, and they respect him and trust him. Hence, when the king honors him, the whole army feels honored. A successful general maintains a good relationship with his superior. Without political support, the army will not prevail. But he achieves this good reputation through his connection with and care for his soldiers. For a good commander with loyal troops is an asset that brings accolades and praise from his superiors. Emulate these characteristics in your own life. Take care of your own resources and take care of those who work for you, as a general takes care of his troops. Establish good lines of communication with others, and both those who you command and those whom you report to. Be flexible and diplomatic, and you will receive the recognition of others. So this is basically saying don't put yourself above people to the point where you're asking people to do things that you yourself are unwilling to do. I think that's really important, and that's something that is a good lesson for people in politics and in power. We see this with politicians that are sending young men and women to war, but unwilling to send themselves or their own children to war. You know, this is where people are like, send Baron over to Iran if it's so important to you, right? At the top, at the level of the I-Ching that says, let's transcend the whole situation entirely. The great ruler issues commands, establishes states, bestows feudal houses. Inferior people should not be employed. In ancient China, a king would bestow feudal estates and honors among his victorious forces. He gave them lands and authority over those lands in return for feudal service. In this way, he rewarded those who had faithfully served him by giving them a role as sub-rulers in his kingdom. He bound them ever closer to him, ensuring their future loyalty. However, a wise king would not elevate untrustworthy or malicious people to such newly created fiefs, for they might abuse their power and turn on him someday. They were given money and not titles and land. The same considerations apply to you. Now that the battles are won and you have achieved your goals, you need to think carefully about what to do next. Do not become complacent, for there is still work to be done. You now face the task of building on your victories and creating a new and rewarding situation. Be grateful to those who have helped you and acknowledge their assistance. Reward them for their loyalty. Delegate authority, but be realistic about what people are capable of. Give real power only to trustworthy people whose values you respect. If someone lacks ability or judgment, recognize their contributions appropriately, but do not promote them out of a misplaced sense of loyalty. Do not permit inferior ideas or influences to infiltrate the new situation, or you will undermine everything you have accomplished. So be loyal to people, but don't give people power just because you want to flatter them, right? Make sure that the people that you're working with can actually carry out the things that you're trying to achieve. This is changing to the hexagram number 27, nourishment. Jaws, bulging cheeks, nourishing others, being nourished. You are what you eat, right? It says, the judgment, nourishment. Perseverance brings good fortune. Observe carefully how a person provides nourishment to others and what he seeks to fill his own mouth with. This hexagram has a double theme. the nourishment of self and the nourishment of others. Both are important to a happy life. Feels very Taurus too to me, like giving and receiving. Like we have to balance both giving and receiving in that decan. Nourishment of the self means care and cultivation of the self. The Book of Changes is concerned with much more than the nutrition that comes from eating good food. Nourishment means proper care of different aspects of the self, including the body, the mind, and the spirit. Just as the health of the body is affected by the quality of the food that you take into your mouth, the health of your life is determined by the quality of the activities that you engage in and the ways that you take care of yourself. Thus, the lesson of this hexagram is that you truly are what you eat when it comes to both bodily nutrition and to the forms of intellectual and spiritual nourishment. If you nourish yourself in the right way, you'll be happier, healthier, and better able to deal with the blows and misfortunes of life that inevitably occur. So this is important about, like, you got to put good food into your body, but you got to take in the right type of information too. If we're consuming propaganda 24/7, we're going to be eating the spiritual equivalent of junk food. I mean, this is, I think, a really good reminder to start thinking about what you want to accomplish on this planet, what you want your legacy to be, what you want to experience after you have filtered out what you don't want, right? If it is important to understand what people are going through and the suffering people are going through, it's important to hear that. It's important to call attention to that when we need to. It's also important not to get so lost in that every single moment of every single day is experiencing suffering. That burns out our nervous system. That burns out our hearts. That burns out our ability to be compassionate. Like, this is what people who are trying to manipulate people do. They will flood the zone with horrible things, and it burns our compassion out to where sometimes we just feel like too exhausted to care. I would encourage you not to do that, because our capacity to care is one of the most valuable things that we have as human beings. And sometimes we have to take a break. Sometimes we have to go do something fun. Sometimes we have to go outside and enjoy the beauty and majesty of this great planet, so that we know what we are fighting for when we try to protect it and when we speak out against the forces that threaten it. So that's the I-Ching, a really nice way of thinking for this upcoming month. And then I've got a hexagram for, or an animal for you, excuse me. This was interesting. Look at this. This is the dragon. Look at that dragon. I don't pull this very often. This book that I use, I pull random page numbers now. I do bibliomancy with this. And this book includes mythological creatures, which I like as well. Today, my personal one was the griffin, the balance between the head and the heart, right? And this dragon, I'm going to read to you from Melissa Alvarez's Animal Frequency. Really awesome book. You can see it's been well loved, right? Use it every day. The dragon symbolizes strength, good luck, and financial growth. Dragon is a magical being that is physically strong, but also has the strength of character that is shown through its wisdom. Dragon is a symbol of good luck in many cultures because it collects gold and jewels, which it guards by sleeping on top of it. So it can bring good fortune to you. Dragon signifies that you are a strong and wise person. Also, dragons can hoard too. So this is also a lesson to not hoard necessarily. You're very lucky in all of your endeavors, especially when it comes to money and increasing your wealth. This creature has talents towards acceptance, adventure, beauty, dignified nature, ecstasy, enchantment, fearlessness, financial growth, fire, glory, good luck, guidance, higher purpose, inspiration, leadership. There's a list that goes on and on. Its challenges are sometimes it can be arrogant, deadly, destructive, ferocious, hoarding, impractical, intimidating, unpredictable. When dragon appears, it means this is a prosperous time for you. This prosperity can be connected to material possessions and bring an increase in the things you own or the amount of money that you make. Spiritually, you'll experience an increase in your intuition, growth along your spiritual path, a connection to your higher purpose. Dragon means you're open-minded and are drawn to all types of metaphysical and mystical topics. You are at one with your unique spirituality and are accepting of others and see the beauty in all things. Dragon means you're a leader who has a great deal of presence. You are regal, dignified, and majestic in your approach to life. People are drawn to you because of these qualities. You are intuitively linked to ancient wisdom, which you willingly share with others. Dragon is fearless and passionate and has a highest sense of adventure. Dragon can also be unpredictable and intimidating, and it's associated with death and destruction. It warns you to think before you act and react so you don't cause a good situation to go bad. Good advice for that Algol new moon, right? Because you have intimidated or scared people off. This will lead to regret and be difficult to fix because it can be avoided entirely if you maintain a steady course of action and keep your emotions positive and uplifting, right? Let's speak as much passion to the good as we do to the negative. Balance, right? This animal can assist you when you need to connect to your own inner dragon and the magical power it creates within you. Dragon means you are enthusiastic and filled with vitality. You have the fire of dragon deep within you, which means you are passionate about everything that you do. Fire can forge beauty from clumps of metal, but it can also destroy all in its path. If your inner dragon has caused destruction, don't fall into despair about it. New growth happens even if fire has ravaged a forest. What can you learn from any destruction your inner dragon has caused? There are life lessons to be learned. Rebirth and spiritual growth can come from destructive events. You just have to recognize them, forgive yourself, and move forward on your path. Dragon is a strong protector. Its wings can help you fly through transitions until you are once again soaring high on a fortunate path. It's good. I love it. Sometimes we're going to be forged in the fire. Sometimes our passion is going to have a little bit of collateral damage, like Aries, right? But from the ashes, forests regenerate themselves. Sometimes those forest fires that are so destructive clear the path for new growth. So see what you've got left. See what you can plant in the ashes that maybe Aries season has wrought with the dragon. Don't hoard your wealth. Share it with others. Let yourself be passionate. Let yourself be a beautiful, majestic creature, and try to direct it in ways that can be productive rather than just destructive. Sometimes we have to destroy to build again, but we don't want to get stuck in just the destructive tendencies. We want to complete the cycle of destruction and then regeneration. All right, my friends, that's what I've got for you. Thank you for hanging out with me today. It's always wonderful to see all your faces in the chat. Do me a huge favor. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe to the email list so you know when I'm going live. You can follow me on social media at Spencer Michaud. Remember that I've got a sale going on until the 1st of May. So hopefully you'll watch this before May and reach out. If something happens and it's a day or two after and you still want the discount, just email me. But 20% off all readings and recordings until May 1st. And go check out my partner at Third Coast Mojo. All sorts of cool magical stuff over there. That's what I've got for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out today. Stella says dragons are also earth protectors. I love it. Perfect. Happy Earth Day, friends. Happy Earth Day to all of you. Become a lover with the earth. Respect Lover Earth rather than just Mother Earth. Get in touch with your inner dragon so that we all can be earth protectors as well. And go spend some time outside today. Go appreciate the beauty and majesty and the change that happens all around you and the uniqueness of each change. No change is ever exactly the same. And same with astrology. No chart is ever exactly the same. And that's the beauty of it. So don't make the mistake of saying just because this aspect brought this thing before that it can't turn out differently into the future. So go be earth protectors today. Go be like Ursula Le Guin's Earthsea with all those protectors. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. Yeah, be kind to yourself while you do that too, and try to be kind to one another. Punch up, call truth to power, but be kind to the people in your immediate spheres. Be kind to your neighbors and your communities, because I think at the end of the day, you never know what someone's going through, and you never know the suffering that someone's experiencing, even if they're lashing out. I think everyone could use a little kindness and a little generosity with one another. So hang in there. We'll see you the next time. And thanks for hanging out with me today. We'll see you next week, maybe in the middle of the week again. All right. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.